Hello. Hello. Do we have audio? Just a second. Okay, we're good. Welcome to my stream today. If you're here, come say hello in the chat. I heard there's some issues with YouTube, but if YouTube's working, then I guess we're good now. When I first signed on a StreamYard, they're like, we're having trouble connecting to YouTube. Can anyone confirm to me that they're watching from YouTube? All right. There we go. Yeah, I've seen chat coming in from YouTube. So I suppose we're live. Yeah. Let's give people a few minutes to join on. I'm going to post this in a couple places. Yeah, there we go. There's like the delay. It's a weird echo on YouTube. Interesting. Wonder if the audio devices are set up weird. Let's see here. Looks like my camera is good. What's my audio? Yeah, it should be. Oh, weird. Why is echo cancellation on? How about stereo? Okay, how's that? Does that sound okay? Is that a bit better? Okay. Yeah, I just adjusted some stuff. All right. Give me a second here. I'm actually gonna open up Twitch as well, and let's see. Let's post the YouTube link, or the Twitch link here for a second, because I learned that StreamYard, which I use, which is kind of my low budget thing. Theo makes fun of me for this constantly. Doesn't really handle information from like subs and whatnot. So when people sub and do stuff on the channel, I get no knowledge unless I'm also watching Twitch chat. So here we are. Let's get Twitch chat. Yeah, and there we go. Insanity Later just subscribed to tier 1. Thank you very much. Second month sub. So we're starting to get people on here. I think I've only been affiliate where you could sub for the last maybe 2 or 3 months. So thank you very much. Okay. How are we doing? Got people on there. Let me just quickly go on Twitter and remind people that I am in fact streaming right now. But yeah, no, I'm really excited to talk about this everything today because it's been a while, as many of you know. So thank you for all the welcomes back. So let's see here. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna quote tweet this. Yeah. Actually, you know what? It's been so long. Let's make sure that my screen share still works, right? Because like my luck is okay. Yeah, we're good. That's gonna like prompt me and make me restart the stream. It's really been that long. Okay. We're live. What's my Twitch handle? I can never remember this stuff. What? Twitch TV/Ryan Solid. Indeed. Okay. All right, let's tweet this. It's just like double check. Okay, cool. All right. So hopefully at this point, we are in a place where, what was I going to say? People are getting past that dreadful pre-roll. And, we can start talking shop. Let's see here. No, that's not what I wanted. Scroll. Where's my profile? This is the fun part of this stuff. You guys get to learn how like terrible I am at tech sometimes. Let's not worry about that too much. Yeah, so what we're doing today, today's gonna be a little bit casual compared to my normal streams. We're gonna just talk about the last month in JavaScript. There's been a lot of releases. There's been a lot of conferences. There's been a lot of spicy stories and whatnot. And I thought it would just be fun to just talk shop, shoot the shit, so to speak. We'll just keep on waiting. As more people join in for just a couple more minutes. There could be up to 3,000 people on this stream, and then I might have to charge you guys for being in chat. So, that. Sorry, I'm just being facetious. I had a lot of good times the last month or so. I guess my last stream was October 28th. God, orange juice, so nice. There's actually, while we're sitting here for a month, a couple people actually asked questions in chat before I even got here. So I'm going to answer a couple, just because why not? Hey Ryan, hope you're good. I'm wondering whether you have anything to say about the blow to the modern JavaScript ecosystem. I do. It takes 10 plus configuration files and 250 microdependencies to build out. Oh, that kind. Yeah, that kind's trickier from my perspective. It's interesting. Yeah, if we just want to like tangent right into like some kind of thinking. I'm very end user oriented. Even though I work on dev tools, I'm always thinking about like the final UX the end user gets. So like I'm like one of the weirdest people to ask this question to, because I'm like the guy who's like, and don't get me wrong, I've been on places where there's slow builds. I also worked on Microsoft.NET stuff during the like 2000s. So like I know what it's like to like, set the compiler off and go grab a sandwich. But like, I would pay every drop of it if it means that the end user gets a better product. Is the challenge of it, right? It's funny. I'm like such a stickler when it comes to kilobytes and loading times and update times and all this stuff for when the user's actually using the product in the end. But I am not the biggest like on the build tool side of things. Like if those build tools let us get there, I'm like okay, like we'll streamline them over time. But number one is get the user the fastest, best product. So like it's tricky. I know a lot of people are trying to like go no build kind of stuff or like lower build, and I feel like the JavaScript language itself has kind of moved on from this. Like I understand at some point it was because the browser compatibility with stuff like Babel, but at this point, like when I see JavaScript, I just assume that that's not what's going to get run for the most part. Like we JavaScript isn't a language anymore; it's a meta language, and I think 10 configuration files is unfortunate. But every time we try and streamline something, these are monumental efforts, and then the opinions change. It's kind of like meta frameworks. Like when I think I used the term meta bundlers before. We kind of get into this like zone where it's really tricky to find the right level of like opinions to kind of streamline all that stuff, and yet leave ourselves to be completely flexible. And I know this is like a lot to get into right off the start here, but it's a challenging thing, because the more opinionated we are, the harder we have actually being inclusive on technologies, and that's a tough one for me. Always working on stuff that's on the fringe, always cutting the edge. I'd rather like bleed a bit on the DX side as we get there than like stress too much about this, because someone's going to come around, right? Rome will come eventually, right? Or what is it? Rome wasn't built in a day. Whatever. We can make enough Rome jokes. It's actually funny. Rome actually came up in the conversation again recently, which I hadn't heard anything from them for like a year. So, I mean, here we are. What else have we got here? All right, here's a good one. Hi, Ryan. Instead of all the work on Solid Start, which is awesome, what about merging the remix and making Solid.js a first-class citizen there, great, instead of competing? Yeah, I love the sentiment here, but it's kind of funny. I actually did talk to the remix guys like really, really early on. For me, not that early on. Like I'd already like started Solid Start for like 8 months, but like the second they open sourced it, I was talking to them, because like the truth of the matter is I never wanted to make Solid Start. I've said that like multiple times. Like we start getting to opinionated places, like people lose freedom and stuff. Like there's trade-offs. You can be smart about it, and I feel like we've been really smart about it with Solid Start, but it's a very hard balance for me personally. And the challenge though is agnostic tools have never been really friendly to Solid, and this is something that I think like Tanner has really recognized, and even when and he's done so publicly. But like when you talk about like these things in terms of like even remix, we sat down there, and what we ended up going like, what could we share? And what we ended up realizing was just the matching patterns for the router. And the reason is that Solid's kind of reactivity is very different, mental model, update model, so much to the point that you actually like everything almost from the like the native part, like parsing the URL, like everything from that point on, you think of updates different. And if you cater to Solid's model and the reactivity model, you can kind of, how should I put it, de-opt into like React's model. But the problem is like, if you start from something that's kind of thinking like a React model, then you can never optimize to get into the Solid model. Like it's very interesting for me because there's like the spectrum of granularity and fine grained updates, and React is like on one side and Solid's like the complete opposite. So like what ends up happening is like Vue and Svelte kind of are in the middle because they can work like React, but they'd much rather have you write your code like Solid. But because they kind of cover that kind of zone, most things that are made like generic to fit a React type mentality still work there. They're just not quite as good as they're optimal. And this is kind of like a, how should I put it? It's just a challenging place to be with, because I talked to Michael Jackson and he was like, we could look at it at one point, but like there's no way we could prioritize that. And I'm like, I needed Solid Start like yesterday. So like that was where these kind of things leave off. It's really hard for people in the React ecosystem to, like when there's a difficulty there on migrating like the state logic side. If your stuff's very Vue heavy, component libraries, all that kind of stuff, like those fly across like nothing. But when you're kind of getting to like really like architectural pieces, React and Solid's architecture is distinctly different, to the point that I haven't, other than a few people who were kind of into stuff like Tanner, I haven't seen people willing to make that trade-off yet. I think they will as more people are going more reactive and they realize that's where the optimizations are. But it's not as simple like as just saying, oh, why don't you just use Remix? Okay, and well, just 3 great questions right off the bat. Hi, I hope you're doing good. I'm also curious about mentioned about quick and solid parting. What that look like in broad terms? I mean, that's another challenge, and one that maybe we can get into a bit more as we cover some of the stuff that's been happening on stream. But essentially, the easiest way we can do it is get solid quickify working, which is getting solid components inside quick, kind of like we have in Astro. And someone actually managed to successfully do that, I believe, yesterday. So getting your solid components inside quick is a thing. But fundamentally, it's a much trickier conversation to have. So yeah, maybe we'll get to that more. Yeah, so let me catch up on chat. Sorry, I've been doing this. What do we got in here? Am I plotting something with Tanner? Most definitely. I think I'm nudging you to get the working quick. Yeah. I don't think it'll be too hard to get the basics. It's interesting if we can optimize further, because quick has reactivity and solid has reactivity. So like there's potential there. Yeah, and the patterns are very great, which is largely why we grabbed a lot of those ideas from Remix and tried to incorporate them, at least in a way that they're portable and like you can use it or just completely ignore it and it'd work. Right. The thing is actually the loader and action abstraction, while doable, we had to still change it. If you look at Solid Start and you see the differences from Remix, you'll understand very quickly why we didn't do it the Remix way and why it makes sense for our reactivity. We looked at the Remix way, but it'd be like a de-opt. So like it's one of those kind of challenges. But of course, we can't expect Remix to change what they're doing. Right, and there's lots of opinions here, right? That's the thing, right? We got the capital Git put post right from SvelteKit. So deop, well, the problem is like it's coarse grain versus fine grain, and like if your mentality is like we're just gonna re-render everything all the time, like that's just not how Solid works. If Solid did that, like very bad things would happen, right? So like even when it comes to routing, like how do you handle update on a route partial? Do you re-render it? Like you're like, okay, well maybe you can get the data props in and then write them into a fine-grained store and then diff that, and that might be fine. But then invalidation becomes a thing. Like if you start building systems with these fine-grained reactive libraries, you might be like, well, why do I want to like always refresh all the data when I could do some of the data? And since I need React, like I could just listen to certain query params and only update those things. Like you kind of go down this branching, and it was like, is it possible to actually accommodate all these people? And I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't mind strong simplification if we can get to a zone where we can kind of like go, okay, by extension you can get here. But for me to get that common ground meant we had to lower the abstraction one level, if that makes sense. Hey, Johnny. All right. Yeah, I love the Q now. Do you see opportunities to make solid faster, or do we hit a ceiling already? In the client render browser rendering thing, maybe, like, how should I put it? Like, let's look at the JS framework benchmark. It's funny, we've been kind of like sliding like the tiniest bit. Like some of them are bad runs, but after enough bad runs, you're kind of like, what can we do here? You know, like maybe there is some space. Like, let me just flip over here so you see what I'm saying. Like, yeah, we got some bad runs, but like we're all around 1.10, 111, this zone. Voby, which is Voby or whatever it is, very similar to Solid, has managed right now to shave, part of it's a bad run, but maybe a 0.01 noticeable off in a couple key places, mostly select row. This is a very bad run. Whenever Solid State or Store version gets a better score than the Solid naked version, you know that like there's something wrong going on. So like in this case, this is a very bad run for select row. So we should be like more like over here, but it varies, you know, within that kind of variance. So it's not a big deal. But what I'm getting at is client side rendering. We're at like the end of the unlock here. I think server rendering is more interesting, but it's not the raw string rendering either. Solid has like the fastest raw string renderer too. It's like the architectural stuff. This is why I want to work closer with the platform team. I think there's like a misconception about performance here. Like you in that it's not like a linear thing. Like it's to the next bottleneck, and the bottleneck we have right now is making our SSR work best with the platform. Another place I think is interesting is reduction of hydration costs. And we've been seeing that with like our, you know, Solid movies demo, which we'll get into. So like maybe I'm just getting too far ahead of myself right now when we're just chatting shop, but and maybe we should talk about some of the news and kind of pull these topics in. Quick question: why does React use class name class? Yeah, I mean this came up a while ago, and I'm pretty sure. Like they could have always used class. I mean, maybe like destructuring kind of is awkward because class is a keyword, but I think it was just like the mentality of like the props or properties. So they looked at the property form rather than the attribute form. But anyway, Solid Start docs. They are right in the repo. We had a problem with deploying, but it looks like we're back up and we're getting some better examples, like how to do authentication. Been driving people absolutely nuts the last few days, and how to do like nested layouts and all that kind of stuff. So if you are interested in getting involved, Solid Start, which by the way, thank you. We're already growing pretty quick here. And how many projects on it? Oh, it's not going to show me this right now, is it? I love this. Sometimes GitHub, you like refresh and it's like, oh, it's not there. Nope, not there right now. It's already been 72 contributors, but there's also, I think there's like 700 uses already. But yeah, in here, this docs project, here is all the wonderful markdown files that you can help and contribute to the docs. So all right here, look here, Anthony, FSJam, you know, already did some great work at cleaning up the docs. So I think those just got released this morning. Thank you, Anthony. I saw you in chat earlier. All right. Would you notice a difference? I mean, it depends. We use significantly less memory, and so like when you see stuff that like scales up, it's just like this kind of added death by a thousand cuts. I actually think the benefit of Solid is the architectural benefit of isolating change using fine-grained reactivity rather than doing these component re-renders. So my gut feeling is subtly yes, but not like drastically so. I think you would notice things are like very subtly feel a bit better, but not like something where you're just like not hugely. I'm sure it'll benchmark better, but it's like this is one of those things where like they replaced React with Inferno, and because even though Inferno was like way faster, like Facebook, they're doing tests and they're like, okay, the boot up's faster, memory usage, all this, they weren't getting like big performance wins. And it's because most of their stuff was trapped in like use memo type hooks, like processing in the body of the component. And like, even if you made the renderer faster, it was the end user code that was wearing them down. You might be like, okay, well then in that case, end user codes or end developer code, you're stuck. But I do wonder how much architectural consideration there. Like for example, React started thinking about fiber and time slicing to kind of go like, how do we take all this like kind of dev junk and organize it so we can like keep the performance good for everyone, even as we get like more and more of it. But I mean, another way of doing like fine grain is another way of slicing things up. So yes, I think you would actually notice the performance benefit if you use solid in this sort of situation. All right. There's just so many people in chat. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that blog post. Thank you. More examples? I mean, honestly, stuff around routing and authentication are the ones, and data fetching, like all the classic stuff. That's the only thing Solid Start actually ships. The rest of it is just like solid. Yeah, I do this a lot actually. I did the vanilla JS implementation. I did. I've updated a lot of these different implementation time. I was the one who added Svelte 3. I was the one who added React hooks. I added. What else did I do? I tried to add Preact signals. I didn't actually make the PR for Quick. I made a version of it, but then it didn't. Before I made the PR, I actually went to the team and was like, hey, you guys should probably look at the performance here. And then when they did the beta release, my version no longer worked. So to be clear, I don't always just go like straight there because I usually talk to the teams before I do that. Alpine, I did the Alpine one. I did all my libraries up here, Vue RX, Solid RX, or KO JSX, MobX JSX, Vue, like all those libraries that I wrote using DOM expressions. Yeah, I've probably done like 12 or 15 of the implementations in here. Yeah, this is a complicated topic. I hope we'll address this a little bit later on. Yes, very supportive wife and 2 kids. What do you think of Bootstrap? Do you think it's a developer experience? I think like I didn't understand it until I saw the Quick guys do a poll and be like, if, forgetting all this resumability stuff, I think it was Manu, he was just like, what DX would you ideally want out of every framework you can think of? And it was like, I mean, with that audience, the Quick audience, it was overwhelmingly solid. Like Svelte was up there too, but it was like literally like it was just like solid. I was just like, wow. And when I go around and talk to people and show people solid, it's the DX wins that seem to actually get people. It's like it's DX in a way that people finally feel like they can understand what's going on. Like they could have built it themselves. Oh, is it released now already? Let me see here. Yeah, we got some first-time chatters in the thing. Did I miss any subs while I was going on my rant? Yeah, Emo por Emilio and Ed Burtniex. Thank you so much for your subs. I hope I didn't miss anyone. Oh, yeah, that one bra. Thank you very much. And Davico, yeah, so awesome stuff. Yeah, thank you for sharing that in the chat, AJ. I'm gonna see if I can pull this over for a second. I don't know if we want to dig too much into this article right now, but oh, nice. Look at this. The table of contents. I know that I'm going to be into a very thorough thing. Yeah, this is the JS framework benchmark. It looks like, yeah, yeah. This looks like if you want to read like the history and this is very thorough. These are the kind of articles that I appreciate a lot because I know they take a lot of time to get all the details right, and then like people can learn a lot. I'm much better at like whiteboarding like the theoretical stuff. This seems like, oh, this is great, and examples and how to use them. Oh, I'm gonna have to look at this in more detail, how to deploy it. Oh wow. Okay, this is amazing. I want to like almost go on Twitter and start tweeting stuff on this right now, but maybe a bit later. I'm gonna actually send this through the StreamYard chat so those on YouTube who didn't see it, because I think the Twitch stuff doesn't feed back through YouTube. Now you can see it as well. Yeah, here you go. Yeah, we'll definitely be pushing that one in a bit. Yeah. And why are solid states named signals? I needed to really differentiate because like they aren't a value; they are a thing that holds a value that changes through time. Honestly, they could have been like whatever. They could have been like observable, but the problem is observable was already taken by RxJS, and I just needed like a couple points of thing. They were called signals in a library called SJS, which is a big influence of solid, and they were also called signals in Elm early days. And I was just like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna pick that name. And honestly, like, it's a little bit arbitrary, but now it's become the de facto name, so I guess you're stuck with it. You know, I mean, that's the kind of thing. But yes, I did not invent signals, but sure in the hell use them a lot. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I mean, this is just gonna be a loose stream of stuff anyway. So like, we'll just keep this rolling like this, right? If I see good stuff in chat that fits from where I'm going, we're gonna keep doing. So keep on shooting it. Oh, sorry. DX is the reason why I don't see most bundle of stuff services. Yeah. Well, the thing is, there's stuff like Dino where they're kind of like pretending like TypeScript isn't a build step, but it's also like, there's so many things. Code splitting. Like, I don't want to get into like a me versus Brian LaRue conversation, but like, there's just like every bit of the tooling is working for you. It's a good thing. Yeah, the hardest thing for us is drawing lines here, because like the stuff that we're using is just really buggy, but it's like all there. So like we could just like fill that out and be like RC and release it. But then like we're spending a bunch of time, like maybe too much time, in the new islands type server component realm, and the stuff there is just mind blowing. And you start using it, and you're just like, man, this is so good. Like, is this the product? Like, I mean, you can kind of have both, but then like when you go down that lane, you start going like, literally, can this just do everything and cover the whole spectrum? But we'll talk about the spectrum in the minute. But I need the push beta, so we definitely drew a line. Whether that's the same line that we draw all the way to the final releases to be questioned. Because like, look, solid start today, the beta stuff, the stuff that we're focusing on, the main thread, all the stuff that we've committed, the docs, all that stuff will build you some of the best apps you have today. It's like best parts of SvelteKit and Remix together with Solid's performance. Like it's a powerful combination. But like, you know, when you're that guy and you're just like, you know what? Like we can do crazy more stuff. And that's kind of where I've been at recently. So yeah, I mean, right now, like the APIs we have are actually pretty stable. Like like it's just a matter of like the bugs. Like for that experience, I feel like we've like nailed it pretty good. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can do better in those kind of zones. Yeah. Ryan rediscovering servers. Sorry, this comment just made me laugh. Okay. All right, where were you? Yeah. I mean, if you find time, just do what you can. Anyway, uh, yeah, this guy. I've been hanging around a lot with this guy because he's been at the same conference as me. But anyways, let's get to it. Last time we were here, we were talking about we made a Preact solid version like Preact, and it performed actually pretty good. It was basically right up there with solid in terms of performance. So Preact signal implementation is actually quite impressive, and Milo, I know, has been working on even crazier stuff on the solid core team in terms of reactivity for our next version. But yeah, for like a benchmark like that, I was very impressed with Preact. We also spent a lot of time talking about NextConf and whatnot last time, and talking about the kind of tension that there was like along the whole spectrum. Like I don't even know. Do I have? I probably, if I pull up Excalidraw right now, will like actually see the thing from last time where we were talking about like how even if it's like not intentional, there's this like sort of alliance of things which puts us kind of in this interesting spot. And I kept on telling people, I was like, look at NextConf, see what's up with server components, keep an eye on Remix, keep an eye on Hydrogen. Like, little did we know, going back, this is old news now for everyone, that like literally like the next day, not next day, like the weekend's over, come back Monday. And so this is where we are like a month ago, essentially. Like absolute bomb drops that Remix and Shopify, which is old news to everyone right now, right? Like I'm just catching up, but I didn't get to say so much, right? Because like people are like, oh yeah, why does NextConf feel like it's like it happened like a year ago? Yeah, I mean because React 18 came out last March. No, Okay. I mean, maybe. Honestly, yeah, it seems suspect. I mean, I had no idea that Shopify is trying to like would be trying to put Hydrogen and Remix together. That I had no idea about. But yeah, I don't know. I think, and you have to understand the reason that I was like looking at NextConf is because conceptually I was thinking that like, how should I put it? I was thinking that server component announcement has to happen. Like it's time to move on. But there's been no anything from the community or whatever. Like there's been no talk about like how this actually looks like until that RFC came out. And when that RFC came out in my head, I was like, oh wow, this just happened. This is way too close to NextConf. There's no way this could possibly be released in time. Like that was where my thinking was. Like there'd have to be like some kind of like time period between like the idea and like actually implementing it. And so that's why I was like very interested, because I was like, are we going to are we going to see some different version and then they're going to work towards the RFC, or like are they going to do what they do and just like go all in on the RFC, presumably because they knew the RFC was coming, and then like essentially just like in the background build the stuff to the RFC that no one else is aware of, and then just be like release the RFC and Next at the same time and just like wing it, which is what happened, which is that's an interesting thing when you consider like how the ecosystem plays in. That's basically why I wanted to kind of look at it. So, like, I think this is a very interesting topic in general, because, like, to be fair, they did not say that they're dropping server components completely, but my first thoughts here was, like, every indication or benchmark I've seen is that e-commerce perspective, React server components outperform Remix. And this is something I'll stand behind. You guys are on stream, you're all on stream with me when we were benchmarking this stuff. Like Hydrogen was pretty sweet. Right? Like the server components, I saw the savings, the hydration costs, like it did fix at least on my simple demos, it was very clear that it fixed the performance issue in e-commerce to a degree that, like, I guess it depends on the site size. I was doing like really small sites, but like on the lower end, like React could easily fit in there. You know, you just spend your whole JavaScript budget on React and then just be like, you know, we're okay. The page is mostly static, but like we're okay. Whereas like React today, you could not do that. So like seeing Remix go in there, I was just like, no, like this is good, but more is happening, right? And obviously, you know, the pre-act thing that I talked about before, you saw they were all being all buddy. Like, you talk about me maybe, you know, having, you know, being suspect, but like seriously, they were we found like they were sharing stuff in public essentially, like on Twitter. If you kind of read between the lines, that's what I was looking at. I was like, yay, what's going on? You know, these guys are really working close together. So this is kind of like an interesting you know, alliance, and I think the potential there is huge now that you have there's this question, right? And this I mentioned, I didn't realize I wasn't sure Remix shop and Hydrogen, like how that fits together. And I'm sure everyone knows how that fits together yet, because like, are we talking about like a Remix server component future? Are we talking about screw server components and do everything in Preact? I don't know, but I think there's this interesting place where we're at kind of a fork in the road, essentially, like trying to, like, if we think about like what can be done here. Yeah, I mean, this is super interesting in terms of like, you know, what's going to go on here. Well, I would think so, but like, because of the struggles, you know, the teams have had, and people were kind of like passive aggressively vocal about how, you know, how to work with the React team and stuff. It's because everyone has their own needs, their own vision of stuff. And I think like what happened is that my gut, when I saw Hydrogen, I'm like, this is the 2020 React Conf demo, and someone just ran with it. But me on the React team at the same time was like, we have so many ideas how we want to do this. And as I mentioned before, and this was reaffirmed when I met Dan Abramoff in London, was it last week? Like they really had a vision on this all along, you know, Seb's vision, and they wanted to implement it. And it just happened that Seb works for Vercel, and then they were the ones who were willing to do it, and the other people were skeptical, you know, after so many years of waiting and you know, API changes and not wanting to invest in it until seeing it happen. So like from that perspective, I can see how we got here. But like, I don't know, like maybe Preact tries their own hand at other performance optimizations in the partial hydration world, or something like server components. You already saw do it with Solid, but you know, like, I don't know. There might be a range there. Maybe it's not the right model. I think people are really skeptical about server components right now in a way that I think it's good maybe from a implementation standpoint, but I'm not actually sure like it's the like we should just like write them off at this point. Could someone help this? Like, what are the chances we don't have this library? I think people underestimate our ecosystem. Like, I don't know what this library is, but I'm given like 9 out of 10 that we already have someone ported something similar to this. Right. We have like 15 form libraries. Yeah, I'm not familiar with like that particular one, but yeah, there is a lot of them. Okay, so this is a particularly good one. So maybe, you know, people can look at that and see. Like, I don't know about this one particularly, but the you know, this is a lot of the conversation. But yeah, in any case, a lot of people had interesting thoughts and responses to this. But I think the most interesting response to me was that, you know, the people talking about being good in theory versus not, was that oh, I love Marvin. Yeah, I mean, good times ahead for Preact, definitely. But I think the interesting part for me is, like, does this have an impact on the React ecosystem as a whole and where we're sitting? Because this was a conversation that I did have with Dan, and you can kind of get there, because like, if React server components are a packageable piece, and if you think about the a UI for it, or the API for it, being like writing use client into things, which is not a heavy lift, but we're actually kind of going into libraries and going, okay, where do we put the use client, and like, how do we make this compatible? We're actually migrating stuff essentially. And if half the ecosystem migrates and the other half is like, I'm using Remix and using patterns and building towards that and not building towards server components, it would be like even more of a split than if half the people stayed on class components versus hook components. Do you know what I mean? Like, and as I said, I've been using the word fork because Dan used the word fork, because like that's really where, like, even if someone doesn't physically fork it, like we're kind of wondering like if you're in a zone where like it kind of is a fork because people are building towards one architecture instead of the other architecture. I think React's big enough to support multiple architectures, but it's interesting when like server components feel, and this could be the wrong impression, like they're kind of like trying to, because of the change that has to happen in React, like it's almost like a new framework wrapping an old framework. They need to kind of like entrench their, I keep on getting like tentacle illusions in my head, like they're kind of like trying to like get them in there and like hook it around so that they can like hold the whole thing together, like it's some giant like kraken or something. But like that's where I wonder if the tension is. Sorry, that's a weird illusion. I'm just kind of like there is a real concern there, right? Because yeah, as I said, I was sitting there with Dan, and he was like, we wanted this out so long. Like, even if the release was like a little bit of a, it didn't come off like, like the hooks release. Like, now the people who care about this stuff are looking into it. We'll have like a niche, set of people who really want to develop it out, in public. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's 100% what you needed, right? Because like now people can slowly build the momentum and get excited about it. Like, this is a big enough change that maybe everyone coming along was never going to be a reality, right? So I definitely think that it's interesting. So like there is a sense that like it's not Vercel calling the shots, but more that like the React team would love you to build stuff in the way that they envision. And like, there's just enough, like the opinions have gone to a high enough layer that now we're kind of like having other people who are deeply invested in React ecosystem, people like the Remix guys who've been doing React since 2013 or 14 or whatever, and who are also like, we have the most popular routing. Everyone like knows how to build their apps this way. In a sense, routing is the framework, and we built the most popular React framework in a sense. If you can look at React Router, I mean, Next could probably compete for that, but like in a sense, like we have two higher level views kind of going up against each other. And yeah, I don't know, I wasn't as worried about the fork thing, but it seems that like other people are, so maybe that's something we should pay attention to. Right. So, yeah. How we doing, chat? Feel a little quick drink. Oh, I see. Hey, Dev. I hope I pronounced that right. It was great meeting you in person at JamstackConf. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is a big one. I think this is definitely a wait and see kind of thing. Next is going to continue on their path. So this is like, where does Remix, Shopify, Preact all fit into this? We don't know yet. So let's move on from that for a moment. Where are we here? We should have called 1 kilobyte JavaScript frameworks. Yeah, I mean, do we want to talk about 0 kilobyte JavaScript? We'll leave that a little bit later for when we talk about Quick. But I want, because like, to be fair, Quick is also 1 kilobyte JavaScript framework. The 0 kilobyte thing is a little bit overblown, because like in practice, like nothing is really 0 kilobytes unless it's static. At which point, like, why are we talking about it? But the reason I brought this up is because like my response to this, because I was like, honestly, I'd settle for anything that less than 10 kilobytes in the app with the interactivity. I wouldn't be critical of anyone who didn't lazy load the framework if it was small and all they needed, because most things there's interaction with it. Yeah, I mean, like everyone can make a 0 kilobyte framework. You just like remove the script tag. So like I think we need to work on our marketing. Similarly, like, yeah, I do want to talk about this a little bit because it's related to the server components discussion we just had, and this was related with what Dan said. I don't know about you, but a lot of people basically went and tried server components when they came out, and they're just like, why is my next bundle bigger? And there was no, like, I forget, I'm trying to remember when the conference was, 25th or 26th or something. No one knew for 5 days until Dan made this tweet, essentially. Because, like, I was kind of joking with him. I was like, seriously, man, it's so unfortunate because, like, you guys could have, like I don't know, like, Vercel with Next could have shipped, like, a broken demo. Like, it could have, like, not worked, like, clicked and nothing happened. But as long as someone went to the network tab and saw less JavaScript, they would have been like, yeah, you know, server components or something. Because, like, this, it did the demo, or like doing the fresh install, did the only thing that this was not allowed to do, which was put more JavaScript on the page. So it's good to know that this was a bug, and that even the current version at the time still didn't have a bug. I want to look at Next 13, maybe next stream or something, when we actually play with it and see where it landed, because as I said, I'm a big fan of server components. Unfortunately, out of all my content, server component content seems to do the worst. But like, you know, I'm into it, and I'm glad that Dan was just like, hey, there was a bug. But like, it would have been nice for, like, because like I had people for days like telling me stuff, and I kept on had to be like benefited out because I saw hydrogen and stuff, and I was like, no, server components are good, you know. And they're like, why when I load Next is this thing giant and blah blah blah, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe there's some Next specific stuff. Is there a bug in your code, or you're using it right? Like, I kept on like doing that, and people were like, no, Ryan, take a look at it. And I'm like, I'm too busy, I don't have time. And then, you know, like 5 days later, it's like, oh, okay, there was a bug there. So like, sorry to anyone that I kind of pushed off and just gave server components the benefit of the doubt. I am very bullish on the technology. It's just like, yeah, sometimes implementations don't land where they are, and I do apologize if I was like too positive towards server components after the next release, when in reality, like, it was kind of a blunder. Yeah, when I can hire them. I don't know. At one point, you know, I was like, you know, Solid's kind of gaining steam, Theo's gaining steam. Like, I don't think I can afford Theo now. um, but yeah. Anyway, yeah. This is the challenge of open source, and like, I mean, like, yeah, to be fair, I'm now hired by Netlify, so I have like a little bit more leeway. But like, as we talked about last stream, this is nothing like what Next has behind them, or, you know, we try and raise money in our way. We're looking at stuff like the Google Aurora project, being able to fund fellowships and getting more people, you know, and working on docs and like getting things done. But you know what I mean? Like, this, until recently, this was literally like, thank you, Open Collective. Yeah, Netlify we could see what we can do. Now we're talking about money. Yeah, yeah. Currently, it's just me, but there have been conversations. But then, you know, what happened with the economy? Things are kind of slowed down right now, so figuring stuff out into the new year. Yeah, no, Lee is great. Yeah, hiring freezes ever. I mean, this is a real thing, you know, and you know, and a lot of people even laid off. So I'm not gonna be cavalier about that. This is a tricky time for everyone. No, like I got the Rich Harris deal, like which is kind of sweet, which also makes me feel like I'm like the most expendable person in a sense. So I love what Netlify is doing, and I love showing what we can build out there. Mostly like R&D type demo type stuff. Like it's not like we're building products for Netlify with Solid. Like I'm just working on Solid Start, getting out there in the community, giving talks, being a good representative, and then like sometimes new edge functions come out and we're like, oh, let's try this caching thing. Oh, let's like roll it up with Solid. It's that kind of stuff right now. It's just like getting an idea of what we can do with edge so that we can both promote proactive stuff at Netlify in terms of doing edge computing, and also they get kind of ear of like what the frameworks are doing, because I'm always benchmarking and playing with stuff. All right. Money is the best JavaScript framework. I'm just going to put this up there because probably deserves this. Anyway, yeah, I mean, someone's talking about the speed that the React beta docs are. It's hard to do like that full, like it's incredible lift, and this is what Dan's been working on. I think mostly solo recently, because like, I mean, that's a whole other topic, but I did get to kind of ask Dan this a little bit, because I'm like, man, I see what's going on. Like, can you confirm this for me? Like, I see what's going on. He's not, the reason that it takes Dan Abramoff to write the React beta docs is not because it's complicated. Like he's naturally gifted at taking complicated stuff and explaining it in a simple way. It's because he knows where React's heading, and it's easier because it's not even about explaining where React is today in the docs. If they are in the process of kind of shifting their mental model, moving towards the compiler, server components, he has to kind of like write docs that he thinks would be valuable like 2 years out, and no one else is going to be able to do that. Like he needs to write for a beginner for something that, and like leave space, for things like he knows that are coming to kind of fit in this narrative that he can stitch together for something that doesn't even exist yet. So yeah, I mean, that is why Dan is the man. Yeah. Do I like Dino? Yeah. I like the Dino like no build thing has been useless for me, but like Dino deploy has been great. And like I think they're doing a lot of good stuff in terms of performance and looking at like how we can. I told you I need to work closely with infrastructure engineers to get the next performance unlock. Like there's a reason, besides great company, why I was hanging out with Luca like a ton when I was in London, from Dino and Fresh. All right, how are we going? People talking about Dan feedback. Yeah, they are great. Our beta docs. The fact that they're called beta docs are actually very much influenced by the React docs, and what's Shogun username, Michael, or he's been great picking up the slack and for the last couple months actually moving them forward after Dan's been getting busier with stuff on Astro. So awesome work. No, Dino deploy for Netlify Edge. Yeah, no, I mean every part of it, and we've been doing a lot of the same kind of structuring and stuff, and making it so that you can like developer journey it a little bit too. I mean, I haven't highlighted this enough, but then like this is our like beta docs, and it's like, oh, do you prefer JavaScript or TypeScript? Are you a Vue developer? And like making these kind of decisions actually affects like, I know that's like not working right now, maybe I don't know, like what content we show you and tailor the journey. There's tutorials getting like these are way better than anything I've ever written. My docs kind of suck. They're like academic papers that got converted into documentation. The work being done here is, using diataxis model and stuff is just amazing. Yeah, but about Bun? Jared is a madman. I love Bun, and I love what Jared is doing. And like he's one of those guys that you just don't bet against, because he's like that crazy. He'll just, he'll get it done. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, there's so much. The docs topic is huge. When I was in the Jamstack conf panel, that was like a big thing, right? So like, yeah, I mean, I want to talk about this for a moment because we're kind of getting a little further along, but I needed to write this post, and it's actually one of my most popular posts that I didn't like do a tech demo in. I asked, is anyone else feeling the weight of all the future JavaScript technology discussion? It feels like a lot. It is because it is a lot. There's a lot of cool stuff going on right now. We need to take some time for this all to sink in. That's okay. If no one knows why I wrote this, I mean, it's a bit of a subtweet. I just needed everyone to shut up. I don't know if people were like getting it, but the discussions had gotten to a point on Twitter after NextConf that like I think the general people sitting around it, like who aren't like right in it, were just like, I don't get what's going on, but why is everyone so heated? And like it was just like loud noises, like, and maybe that's just like a bad read on my part, but that's what it felt like to me. And I mean, I loved technical discussions, but I wanted everyone to like step back and take a breather, like especially when you think about stuff like I think there was a tweet, probably what inspired this was Guillermo tweeted something about Astro and Next performance being like very similar in this page or something, and like it doesn't even matter what the reality of that is too much, but it was like people getting way too invested in like defending Next or something, when like Vercel strategically is a deployment platform which services everyone, so you're kind of like why is this happening? And then like people are like it was very like we got in a really ugly place for about a week, and it was like framework wars all over again, and it was just like, I don't mind competition, but it was just like I started wondering like what's everyone's investment in this competition? Why is everyone like doing this? Like if you step back, you do kind of go like, it's all this is all good, and yeah, I felt that it just needed to be like just stop. People are going to say stuff that they regret, and like we need to just kind of cool down here, especially like stuff around the server components, and that like I got it. Like I'm glad like we covered this last stream. Evan did the due diligence. He was perfect gentleman about Turbo Repo, found out the true facts, have everyone up to the benchmark. Like a lot of good stuff happened. Or sorry, not Turbo Pack. A lot of good stuff happened out of that aftermath where people were being logical and stuff. But we like the whole there's like this tension that was been building up where people have been waiting to pile on React for when they like finally released React 18. Because when they released React 18, like it was like crickets. It was like, okay, I got React 18. What can I do? Nothing. And we let you console log everything twice. Like all anyone ever got from that was like strict mode, but it had so many features like just buried beneath the surface. So people like weren't going to be like there's just a bunch of like skeptic, like there's a certain amount of people like just kind of waiting, going like ready to pounce and finally be like, okay, like, and I don't even mean in a negative way. Like people are kind of waiting for that signal. They're kind of like, is it time to try something other than React? I have to give React the benefit of the doubt. And they're like, okay, so something's coming. Okay, I'll wait to see that. Something coming. Wait to see that. 2 years later, I'll wait to see that. 3 years, I'll wait to see that. And then they're like, okay, is it here? Not here yet, soon. And then like, okay, so is it here? Yeah, it's here. It's like, okay, is this what I waited for? Like, there's this like anticipation, expectation for something that really is just like, just kind of early days. So like the, you know what I mean? Like there's this like kind of heat, and yeah, just, it's okay. Like, even if we're standing on a dam that's cracking and the whole water is just going to come flooding down, at a certain point, it's okay to just like, okay, this is going to happen. Deep breath. What do I do next? So like that was all I was trying to say here. So just my kind of personal commentary. I told you I'm bullish on React server components, and but I'm always bullish on new technology. So like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe don't listen to me completely, but like, yeah, it just, and there's all these nastiest conclusions, and then people getting really defensive on the other side, and it was just like, and then attacking outwards in a different way. Like, I just like, there's another one like about like hydrogen or remix becoming like a, like we shouldn't like build stuff like I'm sorry, Guillermo, a couple of those tweets that week were just really brutal, and people can go find it themselves. I don't want to talk about it anymore, but it was just like, everyone needed to shut up. So hopefully they did. So I know I hate telling everyone to be quiet, but like sometimes you gotta like walk in and be just like mom and dad are fighting, just So let's oh yeah, I almost forgot about this. I don't know if Maple's around, but seriously, big congrats. Astro has been like killing it, just like picking up all the like a bunch of the open source like hot shots and just be like, come work for us. You know. Yeah, I did an open source thing. This interview is really good if you care about like my backstory. If you've been watching my stream for a while, you're probably familiar with it, but we talk about like Canadian engineering. We talk about my sweet solid tattoo and punk rock, and this is like the least technical interview ever, but I still get to manage to spend like 2 minutes talking about how awesome Marco is. So definitely come and check this out, you know, if that's your thing. Okay. Talking, yeah, thank you, AJ. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Talking a bit about, being a gentleman on benchmarks and stuff. Evan Yu has finally decided to check out what resumability is all about. Someone asked me earlier if what my thoughts were on resumability, and yeah, I mean, of course, I think there's viability there. Like, I don't know if everyone here knows it. Quick and Marco team independently came to resumability without even talking to each other, really realizing each other existed. Quick obviously delivered it right away, and that's, they're going to be known, because they did so. And if you go down Mishko's trail, it's far further back in history. He has some internal framework whiz from Google that he can cite in terms of like where he got the inspiration, and he gave a talk in 2019. And this is all like the talk in 2019 was publicly available, so like someone could have like been inspired by that or figured that out. But I'm not gonna lie, I've never paid attention to Angular, so I kind of regret it now, because that talk would have been a gem to really influence future thinking, especially because I was literally working in that space with Marco the last few years. But like, I didn't think Angular was where we were going to find SSR truths. Just like I don't even think they have hydration. So like, yeah, I mean, I actually let's look here, taste movies. I actually think this is, yeah, did you see that? Let's do it again. Oh, it's so fast this time. But the page white flickers because Angular server renders it and then re-renders it completely in the client. They don't actually hydrate. It was funny because I was on Twitter a while ago and someone was like, I don't like client-side SSR and all this stuff, use MPAs because you don't get that stupid white flicker. I'm like, white flicker? No one's had that white flicker in like 5-6 years. Like, what crazy framework are you using? Then I was at NGConf Poland last 3 weeks ago, because I was talking at JS Poland and I watched some talks, and the Angular team did like a discussion court thing, and I was like, oh, I see, Angular. That's the framework that hasn't done SSR. So I was not expecting resumability to come from here. I know this seems like a big dig on Angular. They have like way more other concerns that were important, and I think they finally got past it. They're working on that Ivy compiler, and now like they're like, oh, let's look at signals. Let's look at SSR again. But like I just wanted to kind of like, in my defense, why I wasn't paying any attention to Angular, or why the Marco team was not paying any attention to Angular. I love writing in public as we get new ideas and like doing streams and stuff, because you can trace it back. You'll see that the ideas of resumability are actually published in a Dev2 article several months before Quick was even announced. We didn't have a name for it. I think the article is called like "What the Marco Team Has Been Doing All These Years" or something. What is it? What is it? Let's see if I can find it. What? Oh, I will. Yeah. I guess this was, yeah, so it was like right before. It was like June. But I tell a story about something that happened in March of the year. But anyway, if you're interested in some Marco history, not sure you all are, but I'm just gonna post in chat anyway. But anyways, my point is, there is technical reason to look at resumability. Marco's approach is very different. It doesn't have any of that like crazy, I shouldn't say crazy, like that really granular bundle splitting lazy loading. That's a quick thing. We came to resumability a different path using compilation and fine-grained reactivity. But my point is that from a pure technical standpoint, I don't know how that integrates into real apps and what the real world implication is of it. There is like, you can see the benefits from it's very technical, like obvious benefits. And what I love about this thread is what Quick was doing until November 4th was basically and you saw this when I was running my benchmarks on Quick and whatnot, was basically hydration. Like, it was resumable, but it was like eagerly resuming all the like data structure when it consumed it in from the HTML. So in a sense, like they were doing like a form of hydration. Like, it's not like hydration in the typical run the component sense, but it was like a create all the signals sense, like instantiate all the reactivity and whatnot. So Manu's like, well, we don't actually need to do that. So thanks to Evan's prodding, he actually managed to make Quick's hydration, or not hydration, whatever you want to call it, 14 times faster. So like that's pretty impressive, right? Like, maybe now we can have some better numbers to compare to the impact of here. Like, it's still unclear. Like, this is a stupid demo. This is like, there's something like, I don't know, 200,000 nodes or something. Like, this is just like this. So a benchmark like this might actually be, sometimes I talk about like benchmarks and range, and it's good to kind of like overdo it so that you can kind of like project worst case. This benchmark might be so over exaggerated that it's actually completely useless. But something positive came out, and I was trying to like suggest this is why benchmarks are valuable, because honestly, as an author, if you can find a way to like clearly compare a couple things and go like, okay, in this micro scale, this is where I'm losing stuff. Like, you find a clear bottleneck and you can fix it, and it's fairly trivial. Like, that's a good, amazing feeling, right? So yeah, I mean, this is a real win, and I'm glad that it was value. And I appreciate this tweet from Mishko, because he was like, mad props to Evan and me for making benchmarks on Quick Dev and then privately reaching out to us to let us fix issue. That is how OSS is supposed to work. Thank you. Yeah. This wasn't about getting gains over Quick. Like, I wasn't gonna like when I made the JS framework benchmark, I wasn't just gonna like make a PR and push it up to the repo or something, like and just without talking to them or doing that, like, because like, especially with what I saw when I first ran Quick through the JS framework benchmark, it was like blazer slow. They've made drastic improvements since then, and me saying that isn't even like a thing, because like they actually, if you go on the repo and look at the issue, they actually post the original like results from like when I first ran it. So they published it, I didn't. But it was very, very slow. And my understanding, I haven't seen the latest, is that and it makes sense because they're VDOM plus signals. Like, basically they're very similar in performance to something like Preact with signals. So like that's sort of how you can view where Quick is on the spectrum of performance for client updates. And yeah, they're still like finalizing it, so like we'll see where it actually lands. But it was I very much appreciated the shout out here, because like the thing is, if you make a benchmark and then someone goes changes it, like it's like your article is worthless, like because you wrote a bunch of stuff and then, or you like make a benchmark and then like it's no longer true, and all you've done is kick up FUD. Like the thing is, the truth of the matter is, like these things change at such a rate that like it's hard. You have to find the right way to frame it, because then someone, like if you're not measuring the right thing or framing it the right way, like it takes like 2 seconds to disprove it. And it's, unfortunately, no, people don't actually see the thing. Like most people see the original claim, which makes it a lot harder. So like when I do benchmarks like this, I'd rather like sit on them for like months before I actually show them, if possible, and try and engage the people. Sometimes they won't engage until you actually publish, so that's on them. But like at least that way, like you're doing something at least like reasonable, given a chance, because you really don't want to redo the work because someone's like, oh, you missed this one thing, Oh yeah, Jamstack Conf. Anyone see this? Theo posted some spicy ones too. The Tanner router, which is what he was showing here, it was like literally like an eye opener. Like it is incredible. I wish the video for Jamstack Conf was up, because you like when a new car comes out and they do like a release video and they have a speaker and they play the video and then it's like all lock and step. Tanner's release of Jamstack Router or Jamstack Conf felt like when a like car company releases a new car. It was so slick and so like perfect in like every part of it, and it just went seamlessly with like his talk. Like it was all in the same style, like his talk and his video, and the music, and like that's gonna be the hot talk from Jamstack Conf when it gets published. But yeah, I mean, I did jump over the fact that I did a course or a workshop for front-end masters in between, but we'll see if it gets making into a course, and then we'll talk about it more later. But yeah, I as I said, I was traveling. It was like ngconf, and then I did that, and then I came in for Jamstack. And what you're seeing here a little bit is we had this crazy idea on the first day that we could make the solid integration for Jamstack Router and then stick it in Astro, and then like literally make a demo like that same night before like Tanner did his talk the next day, like literally at Jamstack Conf, just whip it all together. And Fred lives close enough that he like went home, but like me and Tanner ended up like sitting down the later part of that evening and trying to like hack it out. And we got decently far, and we got most of the types working, but we had this like really awkward thing where he had a mono repo and React wouldn't go away. What do I mean by React wouldn't go away? Well, like maybe the ES build thing, but essentially like we kept on like trying to remove React, like TypeScript and all this stuff, and React just kept on like showing up like JSX. Like React kind of pollutes global namespaces, and it's like build configs and everything. Like no matter what we did, like we'd be working on solid code in this mono repo that had solid in React, and React just like kept on creeping back in. We were like, okay, good, okay, I got rid of the React reference here, let's continue. And then it'd be like, bam, React says you can't do this. And it was just like, where's the React? Like it was like playing whack-a-mole. And eventually Tanner's like, I know this will be good, we'll get there, but I am done for tonight. It was like, yeah, but no, it was good. Yeah, thanks people who posted the Jamstack Router in the chat. There's a lot of revelations in that conversation, because like Tanner started going, oh, okay, like he took a very React type model, and by the end of it he's like, okay, yeah, this is how we do it reactive, it'll work for React as well. And that leads more to like the second evening or whatever, like when we're all hanging out at Theo's house and all that kind of stuff, because we thought of some crazy, not even that crazy ideas. We're just like, how easy is it to migrate solid to React? Well, for a lot of people, migrating libraries is easy because you just migrate the JSX is like 80% of it, and then like you just change some logic. This is why we've have like so many React libraries. Like people talk about our ecosystem, but I sometimes tell people to just like go look, because like it's surprising. Like here's the thing: when Preact had Preact compat, no one bothered moving the libraries. Moving libraries from React to Svelte is kind of tricky. You have like a whole different model. Moving React from apps from Solid to React, from React to Solid, I was like surprised at how easy, especially when we did that. What do you call it? We did the hackathon. It was like all React projects ported, and people moved like heavy lifted, like full things like MUI, like Chakra, like they like literally lifted full component libraries in like a month or so, and like those could have. It's surprisingly easy to port stuff from React to Solid. There's tools like mitosis, but that's a subset of React. I actually was introduced to someone working on machine learning, and they were like doing code mods, and they're like, yeah, let's see if we started talking about the startup, like maybe we can, take the solid code mod project, which is actually like, there is one out there if you guys want to look out. People are actually looking at how to code mod it and kind of identifying where the gaps are. They're like, yeah, let's see if we can use ML to convert React to Solid. So like, I think there's an interesting range there, but yeah. Yeah, I'm just reading a little bit on the chat here. Yeah, so yeah, essentially it was a pretty good time at Jamstack Conf. The food, the catering, everything was like top notch, which is very big juxtaposition to what came to the next conference I did after that. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely very, very cool. Sorry, I'm just seeing. So yeah, I don't know if there's much to say other than I thought that the Netlify people were really quite smart to get Theo co-tweeting, co-streaming on it, because we probably got way more views just from him, like being in there, like compared to him coming in person. He came in person the second day, which is, as I said, led to our hangout at his place, talking about like the future of Tan Stack and Solid. But that was kind of the the kind of stuff going into Jamstack Conf and what was going around with it. For me personally, a lot of stuff was happening around Jamstack Conf because I really, really wanted to release Solid Start for that, right? Like, and I wanted to show off, but at the same time I wanted to show off the really cool stuff we're doing, and I didn't want it to muddle the release, so I actually did in reverse order. I released the Movies app demo. I think everyone probably here has seen this by this point. This is the demo where it's like client-side routing. So like, even though this looks like a server routed page, this is actually like, the spinner doesn't change. I can make this animation faster. I actually did that on a branch just because people complain that it looks slower than the page actually is, because this page is very, very fast. And like, if you look at the JavaScript payload for this thing, like this is kind of like what's, oh right, because I'm not in incognito, it doesn't really matter. It's like yeah, the funny thing is I haven't even deployed this again, and it's like giving me different numbers, whatever. It's like 13 kilobytes. It just says it's 13.5 right now. It doesn't really matter. But what as you navigate around, like this doesn't change because the basic stuff was already loaded, except for when we go to search, we load the search box. But this is all like, maybe I should actually put a real word in here. Like, this is all like server component type stuff. So you get like super fast bundles, small bundles. So you get super fast page loading. It was funny, before I even touched any images and did anything special and just like made this demo, we were getting like 92 on Lighthouse with with giant like original images for every poster. This demo has some limits because it's still fairly simplistic, but it's like the starting demo where you start seeing the cost of assets and what like optimizations matter. But this is a great showcase because people could start immediately picturing like, I can get a single page app experience with the same amount of JavaScript as using Astro. So like fast page loads, fast navigation. This demo is super hot. Honestly, like, yeah, I mean, read the article if you get a chance. I actually had to update it recently because I had Quick in here, but Quick changed their implementation. The original Quick implementation was a single page app, so it fit in, but I had to remove it because then they changed to an MPA. So if you see the newest Quick version, it's a multi-page app, kind of like Astro. That's why this app is kind of so groundbreaking, because it's the first application that I know of, like, of this nature demo to show. I mean, we made some already with Hacker News, but it's the most significant one to date to show how you can do client side routing with partial hydration. Like this, like once we started using it, we're like, wow, this is the future. Like just the experience of being able to author apps this way and like basically keep the best of both worlds, and not in like a theoretical way, like in actually like here's the app doing it. Like, because as I mentioned, I thought, I actually, before I published this article, I asked the Quick guys, I'm like, should I put Quick in here? I think it's a mistake that the people who made this demo app made it as a single page app, because I think it doesn't showcase Quick. We got in this really weird place where when we navigate to the next page, it suddenly like had the like death by 1,000 cuts, like all the JavaScript. It's fine because there's like the service worker in the background, but like when I like slowed it down, and my service worker is always off if anyone knows me because I'm always benchmarking. Like you get you get to see like the Quick version was like 57 kilobytes of JavaScript, right? It like really wasn't showcasing it. Like if you want to use Quick, use it as an MPA. I went to them and they're like, it's okay, publish it. At least mention us. It's a good way to like get quick, attention and stuff. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. Even as a single page app, it's still like relatively good in this comparison, I guess, but they, by the time they released their own article, they did go and make it into an MPA and do it proper Quick style. But as I said, what makes this demo really cool is it's not an MPA, and it's like super small and super fast. So yeah. Yeah, so just catching up on chat here for a minute. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny you notice that. I want to actually play into that a little bit more, because this comes in, like, we're kind of building up to like, I had a lot of insights talking to different people, and Tanner was a big one. And why I was talking about Jamstack Conf, because we started talking, and yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. Actually, let's continue forward for a minute before we get there. But I wanted to say that we are like, we definitely feel it. Yeah, I thought it would be, but the Nate from Astro wrote a really fast DOM diffing library, and Morph DOM that Marco uses is relatively fast. It might be slower than the fastest VDOM, but like, put it in economies of scale. Like, I'm not even sure how React server components do the diff if they don't have the previous state of it. I think there's a more aggressive DOM type diff situation happening anyways. In our case, the performance was good in the imp category as well. There's a comment, I think it was on this article, sorry, not here, in here, from someone from the Chrome team, and they were saying something along the lines of like, I felt guilty telling people that okay, it's not here. Maybe it was on my Hacker News demo. They felt guilty telling people that they should get such a low interaction index paint score, but they're like, after trying your demos, Ryan, I don't feel bad anymore, because like it was such like a, yeah. So yeah, I don't think this is really killing us or hurting us right now. Yeah, I mean, definitely. So, I mean, there's still optimization to do here, but even just using this very rough version, like, it's immediately obvious, right? Like, most optimizations have to do with scale, right? A page like this only has one main data source, so the fact that we're doing like more server rendering than we need to right now doesn't impact it. But once you get to the next stage, then this matters. So we still have a lot of work to do, and especially on DX, which I'll talk about a bit more as we continue on. But like, this is part of why I'm bullish on server components. Like, this demo, including like, this is like showing the diffing right here, because literally the input doesn't disappear like while we're typing, even though it's refreshing the panel. We don't lose our focus. We can it just keeps on going. This is, yeah. I mean, I sat down with Nikhil last night and we went over all the cases and we're like, can we do everything a single page app can do with this architecture? And the answer sounds like yes. Like this is something that I've been kind of playing around or struggling with here for a bit, and I'm gonna use this thing. I don't know if you've seen, Fred tried to make a chart a while ago from Astro, and it roughly looked like this. And what Fred's chart did was he basically was like, okay, we got like personal blog over here, right? And then he's like, okay, let's put a few other markers on here. He's like, let's put content site over here, like a news site or whatnot, and then let's put e-commerce down the middle. And I've seen other people make versions of this chart. What was this one? Social media. And then like over here is like freaking Figma. I'm sure Ping is somewhere over here because I always hear that it's too apt, too much of an app to do any other way. The thing is, in my personal opinion, if we start talking about like trying to shade ranges on where things are applicable, we kind of end up in this zone where like, okay, let's pick a fill color. I don't know. Let's use pink. I don't really care. Where like MPAs live here, right? This is their range, right? Let's do this. MPA. Okay, good. Right. And then when we kind of come from the other side, let's do something like green. Single page apps kind of fill in this zone. Like, so like this is kind of classically, and there's this area in e-commerce where they kind of battle out. And in my opinion, it's kind of interesting here because like my personal opinion here, because someone actually is funny. I was at a talk with Alex Russell and Theo, and who thinks React should be in e-commerce or shouldn't be in e-commerce, and Alex immediately shot his hand up that it shouldn't be. Theo did too, and I did, and a couple other people. But most of the audience was kind of surprised by this because even though I draw a single page app here, I actually think that like relatively past this point, like you need to get into like pre-X felt solid range. Like I don't even like most single page app frameworks, Next or whatever. Like I don't want them past this zone, right? Like they're okay over here. The biggest irony from my perspective about this is, can you guess where solid is the strongest? Like where it's clearly like, I usually don't call like strictly better type situations, but where it like absolutely is probably better than any other solution, like comparatively, because there's no way to be the best across the whole range, but where solid is like amazing. Solid is amazing, like very, very, very powerfully amazing. And I'm going to delete this in a minute, but I just want to kind of put this out here. Solid is like incredible here, like because of the fine grained updates of that. It is like so client focused and optimal that it is like probably the very best framework for like this side of the spectrum, like very deep on this side. Whereas like what I'm saying is like this is the line that big frameworks should not cross, right? So Solid's like sitting there like really, really good over here, yet like our conversation is like, how do we bridge this stuff, right? I don't know if you saw AG Grid. I did like a stream with Niall, and Solid like killed it there. It's the reason why Tanner is so into Solid. He like conceptually knows that it would be the best framework to do tables. Like and AG Grid, like it smoked the competition in terms of like what can do it. He actually gave that talk Niall did at Modern Frontends, like at the opener. It was actually like he was showing what they're doing AG Grid and showing how you could do like native rendering in each framework. And he did this. He did a really nice boost to Solid. Like Solid kills it on this side, right? Where you don't care about page load and you care about long session, right? In a sense, you could say that in theory, stuff like Astro and Quick like kill it, and Marco kill it over here. But this is like Solid's like superpower range, and yet, why am I spending all my time somewhere else, right? Like what? Because I told you I was gonna delete this, right? So I am. What I actually want to show here is server components are this new hybrid mechanism, in my opinion. Zones in like this. Like, okay, maybe you don't need it, but when you have a personal blog site or like a doc site, like I've shown you with like Solid Start, like this movies app is even like 13 kilobytes. Like when it's like 5 freaking kilobytes, you don't need an MPA. And if you like the authoring experience, is good. So in my opinion, this new kind of hybrid server client routing thing does this. This is its zone. So when I talk about it's like that. When I talk about like, I don't want to call them server components, but whatever this is, like hybrid whatever, like this zone, Rich Harris talked about transitional. The reason I don't talk about freaking transitional is because I'm not caring about this transition. Like this mechanism's got the whole, like got most of the range, right? Like, but you're still sitting there like, what about these guys? What about the like crazy dashboard? Like what about these guys? And it's really sorry, I am gonna draw Solid back in because I just why not? I'm gonna maybe I use a teal or something, like, because like as I said, like this is the zone where Solid is like the absolute best. This is a very awkward thing. Why it's taken me so much like trouble working through the patterns here, because if this is the best and our users are the happiest in this zone, do I tell them that they should go over here? Like when there's this like Solid, what do I want to put here? Solid kills it, whatever, right? So slaps, yeah, there's another good one. Solid is perfect for Tori, yes. Yeah, all of those things. This is the funniest thing. When I released Solid Start, people were like, oh, what's the next thing on the list? That reason for me not using Solid yet. Oh, right, native. We haven't built the native client, but yeah, you know what I mean? Like, this is sort of like where I see the range of things, like, because React is good over here too, right? But what's ironic is that Solid, while conceptually is really good here, because it's so small in performance-wise isolation, like it actually scales the single page app range. This is the thing, like classically, like we were narrower. Like when React came out, like initial React only cared about like this range. And then we're like, Next.js, let's like start hopping over here. Like what the prerogative of what a single page app does has like shifted and expanded over time, in my opinion. That's why we get here. So like, yeah, what do we got here? Server components. So like, the funniest thing is I'm sitting here right now going like, look, can I do this? Can we somehow get to a happy place where we can like cover this range? Because if not, like, am I doing a disservice to people for spending so much time trying to do this sort of thing, right? Like, because like Solid's already good, like, there's a lot of apps in this place. When you watch an Alex Russell versus Theo debate, like like Theo is just sitting here like firmly over here with Ping and being like, man, I don't care about this. So in a sense, you're also like, maybe I don't really care about this, right? So yeah, I think this is kind of like one of those things where like no solution is perfect. There's always going to be gaps, but like it's very interesting to me, like like it where are the trade-offs here, right? Because like I didn't draw Remix on here, but Remix is also, this is the gap where they are. Like it's possible, but you're like you have to think about how to do it, because like Remix generally sits, like it doesn't have to, but it really, like I find if you like really focus on an area, sometimes you can like get better results of it. Remix kind of like sits here, in this zone. Like they're they're brushing on the same, like server component thing. It's like it's the mindset that lines them. Like it's the fact that when you start thinking things more like an MPA, like don't be get me wrong, Remix can like you can use these in the side of the spectrum. It's e-commerce has such a high performance threshold, why it becomes kind of a wall. But like you can use these all the way down. You might not be able to use these all the way down. I think it'd be pretty prohibitive, but you can use these all the way down. But I'm talking about where you get to a point where people, like no one would begrudge you from like a perspective of like, oh, this should be like some guys like, oh, this should be an MPA, not a SPA. Like yeah. Right. I mean, there's different needs. I pointed something about streaming, and someone's like, Node.js, and I'm like, well, I mean, sometimes sure. I think it's important because I talk about JavaScript being like the a form of like supporting progressive enhancement or graceful degradation. Probably more accurate name is like a part of being accessible for the web. But then like at a certain point, you're like, but I want to do cater for the like a wider majority and want to like get that last bit of performance, get that last bit of like user experience. You need JavaScript. I just joined, so you might already mentioned it, but there's a new social network being built on the wake of Twitter, and it's being built in Solid.js called Post. Oh, that's what the Post is. That's great to know. Yeah, I like we kill it over here, but I'm still working over here because maybe I'm one of those crazy people who maybe think that there's a potential of covering the whole spectrum in a reasonable way. Like obviously you can do that today, but like actually really like good way. Yeah, like all social media apps don't work with JavaScript. Yeah, but the problem is on a technology side. Yeah, it's because the performance is like they care about load performance, where this scale is more about. I didn't put it up there. You're right. This diagram's missing a title. It's like interactivity scale. But you're right. If we're talking about like even session length, e-commerce probably shifts farther left as well. But this is more of an interactivity scale, like points of interactivity kind of thing. And obviously there's some that are farther on this side, like eBay, like an auction site is more interactive than like a fixed shop site. Right, talking about dynamic data and stuff. Yeah, like it's like a complexity kind of measure. What does quick span? Well, that's the thing. Quick is a potential approach. How should I put it though? Quick has their sights on the full range as well, but like that's why they've been talking about like, oh, we don't think about MPA versus single page app, but we're still figuring out the best patterns. Like, just because you cover the whole range doesn't mean that like you figured out what the best patterns are for covering the whole range. Because like as I mentioned, someone made the Movies app as a single page app with Quick, and it was fine. But in a sense, Quick was I take like in if I was just being like pure like performance nerd kind of guy, I take SvelteKit over it or Solid Start in that zone. It wasn't like its forte. Quick is very strong over here, but it's also very strong over here in a way you don't expect, in that Quick has removed a lot of the scaling cost of going across the range because their JavaScript's incremental. But on the other hand, like, just because you can become a single page app doesn't mean you want to be a single page app. So like if you're I feel like where Quick is right now is like they do actually cover most of the range, but like it's not a smooth line. It's like big swells in certain places where like you're like, okay, there's where the benefit is. Because like on this side, it's kind of gradual. You're like, okay, like maybe I'd rather use Astro 11D way over here because it's simpler. Like I probably wouldn't even pick up Solid Start yet. But then you kind of get here and you're still the same. And then you get into e-commerce and you're like, okay, Quick is making a ton of sense here. Big swell here. And then, but it's also kind of like this scenario where you're like, you're like, there's like this tension between the simpler stuff that still works there and Quick. And then here you're like, okay. But then when you get way over here, you're like, maybe Quick's like lazy loading JavaScript can like help me deal with a huge amount of complexity. Because in a sense, the classic MPA is very strong in this range. You add some client-side routing to it, like I showed with the hybrid stuff. Like it's still very strong in this range. I think the trickiest part is like figuring out the quality differences. Like, how should I put it to you this way? Like, if Quick, if you're looking at a range of stuff and like single page app today is fine for most of these things, but it has some gaps. But let's say if you stretch a single page app over into here, you're going to start seeing issues, right? And we can say that like an MPA effectively is considerably better than a single page app on this side. So maybe like let's fictionally call it like 2x. And Quick comes in here and it's also 2x. Okay? But like as you start getting this way, MPAs start dropping off, right? Especially as you get into here, like you start getting less of the benefits. And by the time you get here for Quick's like lazy loading thing, you start going, okay, we're only like at the end, this is the end of the hybrid thing. You're like, we're only at 80% of the improvement over I told you it's like double, so like we're saying 100%. So let's assume that Quick improves, as well, like double SPA, like better. You've lost about 20%, but you're still like 80% better as you're coming into this range. And then finally, when you get over here, like there's an amount of complexity where Quick actually gets even better. Like it's too much, and at this point, like you basically are a SPA anyway, so you're not really improving the client metrics that much, but Quick can still get gains here. Like it's hard to kind of draw this on a chart, but like a part of me wonders if like at which point on the spectrum, like good enough is still a thing. It's funny, I was talking to Dan Abramoff about this because he was trying to figure out how to pitch server components, and he had an idea, and he was like, I'm pretty confident I've got a good explanation that'll get people into it and kind of slowly build that up. And I'm like, I mean, what I've seen the challenge is you React basically told everybody that everything was good enough, and now like how do you tell people good enough isn't good enough? And I think that narrative still sits here, that like if you can build demos and like do work and get all the way to this full range without going to the extremes of some of the stuff Quick does, and hit 80% above what we get today, like almost like drastically like double the value, but not quite double, but Quick doubles it, people aren't going to be making their decisions based on performance here. It's going to be some other element, because whether you're doing quick resumability or you're doing server components or something like that, like no one's going to be like it's going to be the DX thing that's going to do it. It's not going to be like doing points, because compared to the classic single page app, you've already like doubled that lighthouse score. Like it's not like, are we like people arguing over like the really like everyone will get hundreds on the low end, and then people will be like, on this giant, it's like the difference of like some giant app getting, it's 85 instead of 90. Like it might make a difference if loading metrics, like you're in e-commerce, but I haven't seen the e-commerce site that complicated to actually have that, like, you know what I mean? Like I worked in eBay, like we're doing perfectly fine with Marco. I think we could do better, but like what I'm getting at is like, it takes amount of complexity to unlock to get to the differential between the different approaches. And I think that's going to be a challenge to sell for a while, because like the type of people that need to reach that point are far less than people realize. And when other solutions come up that like maybe someone comes up with an easier way to explain it, like they're like, it's going to be like, and the DX differences and stuff, people are going to be like, oh, I think that's the challenge here. And this is why Quick keeps on like we keep on like circling and going like, how do we market this? And a lot of this stuff comes in the performance conversation. I wonder if Solid is kind of like past the performance conversation largely. I still get into it, but like at a certain point, that's not the thing that makes the decisions until you get to another certain point, which is much further along. That's what the design feels like, but I don't think anyone, I think if you turn to a single page app, you've lost, unless like you're Figma. So like if you or over here, like if you actually need to turn into a single page app, like where you're in this zone, then then I agree. That's why I'm saying I don't think we figured out the right patterns yet. Because I don't think everything should be a single page app. And I think we should actually, in a sense, and I'm going to get rid of Solid Kills It one more time. I think in a sense, where if you go to the historical single page app, which kind of covers this zone, I'm going to call it. If you're sitting in here, that's really where single page apps want to live. I think that with the right hybrid model or whatever, like you actually might not even want single page apps past this point. And you notice I'm not even covering social media here. Like I actually think that past this point, single page apps just might not be the best architecture. And like this is going to be a very compelling argument. I mean, Live View and HTMX are a tricky one because like mechanically they have pretty good performance, which means that like they fit well into e-commerce, and they could probably do social media. I don't know, because the biggest difference between something, and I know that Live Vue.js kind of handles this a bit, but the biggest difference between like the kind of work that the React team has been doing versus the Live Vue stuff and like not WebSockets and that is building a interface. Like it's still like an application first model, even if it's distributed. Like it's not like the server knows. And this is always a challenge I had with like stuff like HTMX. So like I feel like HTMX, even though it adds single page stuff, it probably covers a lot of the same area that the server components stuff does. But I'm not convinced that it can cover the full space. That's sort of where my head is. Like I think it covers a lot of the same area that this hybrid thing does in terms of like what space it takes up. But I'm not convinced that it does it can do the whole story. Not that it necessarily has to, but like that's sort of where it fits in my head at least. Do we even need a router shared on the Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's why they're dragging their feet. I think shared transitions I brought this all the way over, but there might be like a certain like this line might be like here maybe, but it's very easy to like when you get on this side, it might actually be complexity in authoring and stuff. Why you wouldn't go the way? I feel like that's achievable. DX is always achievable. Like as long as you can do it mechanically, you can get there. But like part of me wonders if it's just like this range, you know, like like I do see this as like a third thing. Even if we aren't there yet, the work that we've been doing on partial hydration, even Marco over the years, it was like the start of understanding what this third area is, because like Marco has always been alienated, and I feel like a lot of part of it is like people didn't understand the vision. There's like the classic MPA people and then like what became the classic single page app people, and they didn't see the potential for this. So like both sides hated on Marco, so to speak. So it's kind of like I'm glad that Marco is getting its redemption now that people are kind of getting into this space. But it's like I feel like we are talking about not like we are talking about something new, like a third clear architecture. People are talking about reactivity and solid in chat. Yeah. Yeah, people still talking about reactivity in chat. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just catching up. Sorry, people are wondering if I think Spotify. Okay, let's put it out here. Do I think Shopify bet on the wrong technology? I don't think so. I don't think. What's Spotify's goal here? Is it SEO, like eBay or Amazon, or is it like to make it really easy for people to set up their own shop and customize it? I think the barrier for end users building their shop and stuff was probably justified the thing for Shopify. I think they would very much benefit from some of the performance gains and stuff from like React server components or whatever they're going to work on with Preact if they're going to do that. But like push comes to shove, their customers are people making those storefronts, and that's who that they cater to. So that's like it's a pretty. I said Preact stock is going up right now, just because people trying to look at React alternatives. I'm hoping through that and people playing with signals and stuff that they might notice some stuff about Solid and realize that like maybe it's time to make the architectural switch. But I think that I think Shopify did probably the exact right thing that they needed to do given where everything is. You need to write more in server code to get the most HTML. You can write headers. Yeah. I mean, HTMX and stuff does really powerful thing. I'm just like saying like, the thing about it's a controlled granularity. It's like we want HTMX for navigation or big changes, but then we want client-side JavaScript for small stuff. Like it's a scale. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's like having. I talked about transitional apps like not being real because of covering the range in a sense. But when we look at specifically at interactions, I do think it's a hybrid or a scale, and that's the thing. I think some stuff does belong in JavaScript. We can't just like sit there on the server. It's very awkward. I've been there before. We've all been there if we built MPAs. Not that they're called MPAs back then, but in the 2010s, we need to, there's a big benefit to single page apps. And as long as the MPA crowd doesn't acknowledge how big of an improvement single page apps were, they're going to be stuck in the past. Yeah, like straight up. People are trying to compare solid and complexity. Yeah, I know. I'm not going to get pulled into that one right now. I understand that there's still gaps here. I would love to see more party talent support. I'd love to see Google get in there and support them. I'd love to see anyone. This is something that we all need. Like it's so funny. Like Quick, does a bunch of work, speeds up things, kind of like Marco's been doing forever. And then it's like, bam, our site's still 60, and it's like all those third-party scripts. Like the amount of difference something like PartyTown makes compared to like frameworks and good engineering is absurdly. It's just absurd. I know there's still gaps, but like it's like Party Town is the single biggest performance improvement for a lot of sites by like orders of magnitude more than what I can do between different frameworks. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I actually think reactivity is just like a nicer DX than like there's differences. The language looks similar, but I really want to point this out here. I think like how should I put it? Like I think there's like can I draw this as a scale too? But I want to talk about this for a second because not all solutions are equal, even though they look kind of similar. And part of that comes in like React has amazing composition. And like it might be a little bit heavier, but it's like super powerful. And then something like Svelte is very slim on syntax, but actually its composition is like something else, like stores. Like they don't have like, don't get me wrong, Svelte can do every piece of composition that React can do. I think even you can even do control flow composition if you really try. It's not idempotent, like you have to change the APIs essentially, which is like my gripe. But generally speaking, like you can do composition with Svelte, but like from a language perspective and their hooks, like they're not really geared for composition. But like those two are kind of like the opposite extremes, right? So you can improve on React by streamlining it, and that's something like Solid does, right? In terms of the like execution model, like there's benefit there because Svelte kind of also has a feel of that execution model, and you can get composability, which Svelte does not have in the language with Solid and stuff. So like it's not quite like a scale that I can draw here, but like Quick and Preact are kind of like in one grouping. Svelte is in another grouping, React's in another grouping, and Solid and Vue are in another grouping. If that makes sense to people. So like I kind of put like out of I don't know if I can draw it, but I just wanted to just so people have clarity here that there's basically like React, then there's like what I would call Vue and Solid, and then there's Preact and Quick, and then there's but even Vue is in the Preact. You know what? Yeah, this is kind of interesting because like it's actually this isn't actually right because actually in reality Vue is over here too. It's like Vue's the original here. Like I don't know how to chart these out. I just want to explain that there's differences in all three of these systems in terms of what it means for the developer experience, like in terms of like architectural impact and composability. And to me, these are four distinct things that have DX trade-offs that you have to consider. Oh yeah. Someone's like, I don't have a left or right here, but someone's suggesting that it should be more like this, and I think that's actually accurate. Like I think if there was a scale, it looks like this. I was putting language consideration into the thing, but when you talk about like, yeah, there's different scales you can do. These shift, but this is one scale, someone might say. I'm sorry for not being particularly clear, but like Solid's fine granularity goes all the way to rendering, and it's the only one that does that. These guys do like a hybrid, and it has impact because like obviously these are like there's a VDOM that can render here on the Vue side, like on the, and I don't mean Vue, I mean like the template side. And then like React's like fully like that. I mean it's not fair because like Svelte is also like this depending on what graph you do. Like don't worry about the order of these. I just want to say that these are four distinct approaches, and if I'm going to say something, React's doing this right now. They're like looking very amorously at Svelte, and their new compiler is kind of like doing this game. So, but so maybe this like boils down into actually three. Like, if we ignore language, like maybe there's like three views of this. But what I'm getting at is it's not that they're all the same. I think there's actually like, because React actually wants to keep compositions, so which is where I started. So I'm sorry, this is just a mess of a thing. Don't worry about the order of these. I just want to say that there are differences, very clear differences between these approaches, except these ones are sort of in the same bucket. It's a good question. I think backend frameworks have their place, but yeah, I mostly focus on front end on the back end because the challenge here is that to unlock the perfect client experience, we need to be on the server, and that makes it hard for non-JavaScript stuff. So that's kind of why we're here. I think there's a lot of back end optimization, a whole realm of stuff you can do on the back end. It just when it comes to the web server side of it, we need to, if we want to get the best client experiences using the models that I've been talking about, we need to have our frameworks on the front of the back end. Yeah, see, some people have that, but like to me, Svelte and Solid are very, very, very different. And it's actually React and Svelte that are more similar. I know no one gets this because they're thinking like DOM VDOM, but it's not about that. It's about like we're all, it's such a hard thing. Why can't we? If you pick a vector, we are all like each other on a different vector at a different time. Like you just have to pick like a 4D, like pick two axes and then choose those and chart, and you'll get tons of different variations of it. So it's not, this is why we kind of carve out unique spaces, because these solutions are actually all different from each other in different ways, enough that they actually carve out their own space enough. But funnily enough, like that overlap of Vue Preact Quick actually I think happens more often than you'd think across all the different tables. Like not classic Preact, but like Preact with signals. I just wanted to kind of throw there. Classic Preact is clearly in the React camp, but Preact is sort of like playing with this game. You know, like if like we'll move over here maybe if React is moving over here. Like exactly, people are saying like, oh, maybe they're in the same group because of single file components. But like again, there's a big difference between how Vue renders and Svelte renders. So yeah, I mean, yeah. And yeah, so from a DX standpoint, Vue values a lot of the same stuff as Svelte, whereas Solid, Quick, and Preact and React all value something else. Anyways, so yeah, a lot of people trying to place their stuff, and I can draw 10 charts, it doesn't matter. Yeah, exactly. This is not a simple subject, and if you watch my stream, you'll learn little bits. You know. Sorry, that tangent probably went on longer than it needed to. Okay, so let's get back to it, so to speak. Yeah, wow, we were right out there. Yeah, so we released the Solid Start beta. If you haven't watched it, I strongly suggest watching Theo's stream. It's on YouTube now. In fact, so much so that I might actually just like go find it and post in the chat, because the like this conversation is great, and yeah, I mean this is gonna play for a second, but you guys won't be able to hear it. So let's get rid of the timestamp here. Watch this video if you haven't. This was like my sub in when I wasn't streaming that week. It's definitely a good watch. I had a very good time. We've been wanting to go on stream together for like literally over a year. It feels like we both started streaming. Yeah, I started in August. He started, I think, at the end of October. And right from the beginning, we're like, when am I going to go on your stream? And it finally happened. A lot of fun, a lot of good times. So anyway, just a quick shout out to that. You'd think that I talk a lot about the Solid Start beta, but we've talked about it with Nikhil. I don't know if there was actually much new there, right? Oh, sorry, I forgot to shout out Nate Codes for subscribed at tier 1. I missed that a little while ago. Thanks, Nate. I actually need to catch up on Twitch chat. Make sure I didn't miss any subs. Yeah, okay. Let's keep going. Okay, so if you haven't heard of it, I mean, I'll give a quick, not pun, thing here, but essentially, solid meta framework like Next.js. I put in some funny opinions, but essentially we have a built-in RPC method that does a lot of stuff that's super powerful because it lets us take current patterns, stuff like TanStack query, etc., and actually port them to a world where they can work server only without having like get server-side props and stuff. So this is a really powerful pattern. We have progressive enhancement forms. We have all that stuff, and it's in beta. Beware, that kind of thing. But big news for Solid, so I definitely want to give this a shout out. Been working on this for almost 2 years. Started back when Vue 2 was released, and it's just taken forever. So I don't know if I want to tell you a ton about it, but that's the whole Solid Start thing. I think I've showed a lot of these demos on stream, right? So yeah. Yeah. I think there's good patterns in here that can really help streamline stuff. And what I love about the patterns of Solid Start is that they're composable, and you can always like rip them out. Like even if there's a place for something, you can always like import it into that place. Like it's not, the stuff isn't locked. I think this is a really powerful thing, and Theo really digs into it because he cares about that. So yeah, I honestly, people should check that out. I was trying to push it while I was away because it was like my stream while I wasn't streaming. I just didn't have time. I missed so many Fridays in a row. If someone's asking, yeah, so yeah, parasocial media or whatnot. I forget what username you want to go for at the moment, but like Netlify, Edge, so Dino stuff is great. Obviously you can do stuff good with Vercel. I'm a big Cloudflare fan as well. So like Cloudflare workers, and Dino deploy. So, but the thing is, like, if you do Dino deploy and use Cloudflare workers, like both technologies are great, and you're essentially going to be, you can use them straight, or you can use them as part of Netlify or Vercel. So you're in a pretty good place. Like you're going to be using one or the other. Obviously, there's things that don't go on the edge, and those things will end up in serverless functions and AWS. I just get sad, that streaming doesn't work on AWS yet. So both Vercel and Netlify standard functions don't get our streaming. So So yeah, in any case, do check out Solid Start. Anyways, yeah, great. Theo and his thumbnails. Yeah, so yeah, it might be worth checking out the Jamstack Comp framework discussion panel. It was really fun. Fred, myself, I can't remember the guy from Nux. Sorry, it was Alex. And then obviously, why am I? This count doesn't exist. What happened? Never mind. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I was slipping on the first name. Thank you. I know the last name. I was like Janiak. I knew that was the last name, but I was like Jessica Janiak. Yeah, I don't know what happened. This account doesn't exist. Okay, well, maybe it's the end of Twitter. Maybe it's finally collapsed. But at least like awesome, representation Astro, Solid, Nuxt, Angular. It was a fun conversation. Yeah. I'm not surprised. Yeah. This is real. Yeah, people working on building stuff in Solid. Yeah, I stuff's starting to pick up. Elon happened this month. Yeah. Yeah. What did I miss while I was away? Yeah. Yeah. That's probably like the biggest news in tech, and I'm like not covering it because, content. Um, I'm going to pick up on this more, but I do want to point out this tweet for a moment because I actually feel that this is so real. Theo says something online. Astro will win because they're the only HTML first framework that doesn't hate people who use JavaScript. And I know this isn't true. Like Alex Russell, as much as he talks about the JavaScript industrial complex, his like sticker, his brand is the anti Java. What was it? God, I'm gonna screw this up now. It's something like the anti JavaScript club or something. Like they're not that they're anti JavaScript, but you know when you talk to people who work along all these frameworks, especially the platform style like web component stuff, enhance or whatnot, they get very like pushy against other like JavaScript frameworks, and it gives you this impression that they don't actually like they want to like be critical of you using JavaScript, because JavaScript is kind of like a pandemic from the perspective of the way like it's growing over years. But I think Astro has sort of struck on something that is just so simple that people get, and it just like it works. It's kind of there's this like universal love here, kind of like Vite, and I think that's really really powerful, and something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, especially when I was sitting there with Dan Abramoff and he was like kind of trying to figure out how to sell people on the value of like server components. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, do you realize like what Marco and Astro and Quick and everyone's been trying to do around MPAs and multi-page apps? Like literally this struggle has been the struggle for like the last few years. Like we've been trying to sell on value. We tried performance, we tried all these angles, and in a sense, even though there hasn't been like a success story completely in this space, if you're going to look at one right now, like for that kind of partial hydration space, you have to look at Astro. Astro has made people love it without pushing partial hydration down your throat. It's just like this feeling of free wins, and I think what Astro's done is incredible from that perspective, and I think we should be paying attention from it, even from our white tower academic JS framework like towers that we've been building. People had never heard of partial hydration before Astro, right? Do you know why? Because like I can find you some articles where the Marco team describes partial hydration for like years and years and years. It's like reading like a document. Like it'd be like reading like Seb or like maybe even Dan or something. Like, you ever been to Dan's blog, what's overreacted.io, and you like algebraic effects for the rest of us? There you go. Like, this is very well explained, but like explaining partial hydration to someone a few years ago probably felt like this article. Like, if you're really into it, you're gonna like follow this, but like that's that this is a sales pitch is not gonna win people over, because they're like, so what I need algebraic effects. Like this is sort of like the problem of marketing or pushing partial hydration. Astro tried to come in with islands partial hydration. It kind of worked. They tried 0 KB. Like, everyone tried like all these different angles of it, and then finally, if you go to was it astro.build and go on the website, it's like build fast sites at the end. Like they slap in an island thing in here, but like literally this, because people just pick it up and they use it and they like it. Like, they didn't have to push so hard. And I think this is really relevant, because usually those paths to simplicity are where the success happens. It's not the most optimal solution. It's the ones that make it like enjoyable or like obvious to use that usually kind of pull out. It's hard in our space because it's so entrenched, but yes, algebraic effects are awesome. I'm not, but yeah. Right. Yeah, comments like Astro won on DX. I pay attention to this. Right. So still going on start. Fireship made a video. I don't know how to thank this guy. Like seriously, he makes a video and like the mountains move. So like, thank you so much, Fireship. Like, um, again, this is a good way to get a highlight of all the features if you don't want to spend the whole time watching Theo stream. But I don't want to just like monopolize time on this solid stuff. I think there's a lot more interesting stuff that's been going on. This meetup coming up in New York is interesting. I think people from Post, that new solid, project coming up, and also Babel is sponsoring it. There's a lot of interest in a lot more companies using Solid, and this is a future program we're eager to promote. Yeah, I'm very excited where stuff's heading right now. People are really starting to take us seriously. Have we caught up now to modern front ends? Should we talk about modern front ends? I was gonna wait until there was 3,000 people in the chat, but I guess I guess that's not gonna happen. I mean, we sometimes set our expectations too high and we don't quite reach them. So yeah, I mean, people are probably expecting something kind of spicy from me. But like, truth of the matter is, like, it's funny. We are actually on a yacht here, and people made a big deal about like, oh, the speaker's dinner on a yacht, and like people pointing stuff and suspenders. This was just a restaurant. Like the conference center was literally against a dock, so there's like permanently parked boat with a restaurant on it. If you guys are wondering about like misspending and stuff like this, like there was no alcohol at this event, so like the food was great and stuff. Like I had a really good time. I just want to point out there that it wasn't like that, right? I obviously have my own story, but as you can tell, I just want to show these pictures first to show you how awesome of a time hanging out with like Luca and Manu and Eric and Shai, and Sam and like everyone, like this is we had a lot of really good hallway track. Like who's this? Chris, Create T3 app, Fuzzy Bear. I don't know. Sorry, man. I actually, did you have, I don't know if you want your face out there. My bad. But Kent C. Dodds. Can I sneak some other people in? Yeah, people, did you pay for travel? Not out of pocket. I just wanted to show everyone, like, this is me at 5 p.m. on Friday, to be fair. This is the big room, by the way. If you saw the thumbnail for my video, that was the, like, let's just go through it. Like, where did I start my journey? My journey started here, where what's lovely about it is that they haven't updated the site through the whole thing, so you guys can all see along what happened. It was like, okay, this is gonna be a huge conference, 3,000 plus developers, 100 plus speakers, 2 conference days, 2 workshops, 5 tracks, and if you look at the speaker lineup, like, man, is this stacked. Like, I did not put a call in for papers originally. I wasn't like part of this, but then when someone was like, hey, it was actually Dan Jutan who's like, hey, you want to go on this? And I was like, wow, Daniel Rowe, Kent C. Dodds, I'm a big fan of Mark Erickson, like just people I want to meet personally, Luca from Dino. Like there's just, I could just go through, there's so many names here, Expo, Evan, Fastify, Teo, like there's just like this, so Niall from AG, like there's just like Ionic, like there are a lot of people, Cypress, like TypeScript, like this was like a stacked conference, and part of it is like maybe if you get like 100 speakers, you're generally going to have stacked. I think there was like I don't see him here anymore, but I think Jared was here for Bud, Ben Lush, Jay Phelps. I was just like, wow, this must be the conference, right? And the thing was, they told me straight up that they could cover me, and I was like, well, that's too bad. I understand there's something about them like covering some like women in tech conference and all this stuff, and I was just like, okay, you know what? I'll ask my employer, and if they're down, I'll come. Otherwise, not. So, for me personally, I didn't actually have that big of a friction there because like if they weren't going to pay, I wasn't going to go, and I went to Netlify. And they're like, yeah, we're sponsoring the event, and Phil's the MC, so you'll see him there. Yeah, this is good. We can like get a couple people from Netlify. We can like, as we can kind of like make a good presence, and let's do it. So I didn't, in a sense, I did not have to pay, but on the other hand, they straight up weren't covering me. Like there's other people who had their own stories, and they've shared that on Twitter, and you can read them. Dan, funnily enough, was supposed to be covered at first, and then they pulled coverage on him pretty early under the guise that like now that Dan had signed up like Fred and myself, that like maybe the Astro company could cover him, and then that never happened. And then Fred ended up not going because it was kind of shady on like what the reimbursement was. The truth of the matter is, it was kind of, I guess we all kind of suspected moving in. I didn't know until I went to my first, like this is my first time, like September I went to React Finland, which was my first in-person conference, and people warned me of the conference at that point, but I'd already like bought tickets and I was already in at that point. So I'd like, and I got a Netlify to sponsor me, so I was gonna do it. But essentially, I was in for it. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things that didn't happen. Like they've sold virtual tickets, but there was no streaming. There was no tech crew. Like you go into a room and you see like multiple speakers trying to help each other out because like you'd like be like, okay, why is this projector not working? Let's like, okay, try my laptop. Like it was that kind of scenario. Like a bunch of independently set up meetups. Like, it kind of felt like that. And the biggest thing for me while I was there was I didn't want the conference to be a disappointment for anyone who was there in person, who was actually participating in it. Because they paid good money. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's probably like 300-ish people there, probably. And, I have to admit, I had a lot of fun. I know that like a lot of stuff, like if you read, people had like because they were out of pocket. Like I talked to one of my friends who's a speaker, and he had to get a visa because where he lived in order to get in there, and that was a few hundred out of pocket on top of everything else. Like it was just like people in hopes of like being able to speak at such a conference with so many people and such great speakers and do this stuff. A lot of quite a few first time speakers too, like Ketcherton, who did, or Kyanton, damn it, name's wrong, did a solid JS talk as well. People getting to do their first conference, and they were like, you know what, to be at this conference, I'll put a little bit out of pocket because like it's worth it. And then, you get there, and then is it worth it? I mean, that becomes kind of the question. Because I was covered, even though I saw a lot of that stuff happen, like I wasn't as personally affected, so I don't have the juiciest story. Everything was just like the feeling going on, because like I remember some people after the first day were like almost wanted to boycott it at that point, and I was like, man, like is that gonna do it? Like, because like like some people showed up were like, oh, I'm not gonna show up tomorrow because I didn't realize or whatever. Like some people, I guess, got it for free, or like it was just kind of like, the thing was, the people most out were the speakers by far, because there's 5 tracks essentially and 300 people, maybe like 300 people including like the 80 speakers. So at any given point, you might find yourself speaking to a room for like 5 people. And every room I went to, and I guess I went to a lot of maybe the more popular talks, were well filled, so it wasn't a problem. But I remember like at the end of the day, there was one that wasn't, and I was right after I talked, and I was doing like kind of Q&A with some people off stage, and they're like, one of the only times I actually talked to Jen, and she's like, "Oh, can you go watch this talk? There's no one in there." And felt, and I was like, "We're like, yeah, definitely." So a bunch of us went in and watched this talk, and it was a really cool talk actually about accessibility standards. So like, it was, I think it was like Chris, Crate T3, Luca, myself, Daniel Rowe, like a bunch of us like went there, and it's kind of interesting because in that environment, like if you were giving a talk, there's like a relatively good chance that your audience, like the speaker to rest of audience ratio is really high. So like all those people that you wanted to meet are probably like, unless they like ended up, I guess, split between the 5 rooms or whatever, but there's just like a higher ratio that those people would be like like in, like maybe not higher than being in a big setting, but like the opportunities for interaction because of these smaller groups and breakouts, like it literally felt like what the hall track was like just you couldn't turn around without bumping into like people you want to meet or talk to. So it was like, yeah, I don't know. For me, it was incredible because I probably gave my best version of my Solid.js talk to date. And I hope that people got the same thing out of like, whenever I talk to anyone during the conference, they're just like, "Oh man, I was just talking to so-and-so. It's so amazing." Like that vibe was still there. It's just like behind it all was like the fact that like, yeah, I mean, I think people will look into it and see what's going on. I think the biggest concern is if there's some kind of malintent there. And the reason that there's a certain sort of who cares kind of attitude. Not who cares, but like, I don't know how to put it. It was like some of the talks actually ended up getting recorded because Shai, Devrel Quick, speaker, the guy said earlier that I was, hanging out with a bunch. He started going around trying to record stuff, and he like offered before. He's like, "Hey, do you want? I can like bring some recording gear. We can like maybe at least record the main thing." He's like, "I can do some MC work," and it was just kind of like, "Yeah, whatever. Or no, it's okay." Like it was just like what made the conference good where it's good was that where people kind of volunteers stepped up, did it on their own terms, and didn't really interface with like the promoter, so to speak. And like it just otherwise just, I know a lot of money went into the sponsorships and all that stuff. So and the space was shrunk down, as you can see from like this. But like there's another screen over here on the side. Like it was like, not the smallest room, but essentially, how should I put this? Like, the people are going to probably be looking into like if there was money and where that money went and what went wrong or whatever, because a lot of people were out of pocket. So, I mean, that's sort of mostly what I would want to say about that. Like, would you go back in the future? No. Like this was not. It's unclear, but I think there might have been opportunities to redeem this at different points and they weren't taken. Like I think this is like a lot of things not going wrong or not going right and just continuing to go off the rails. And I stuff happens, whatever, but like after a while you're just kind of like, it's more than that. I'm going to let other people look into it and figure out what happened. People who have stories to tell their stories. I personally got a lot from this conference from networking stuff perspective, and from like I had a really good talk. Like just watching like Kent Dodds light up in the middle of my talk when I converted the vanilla to JSX was worth quite a bit on that side. But I also didn't pay anything to go there, so I'm not one to talk. So yeah, I think that this was not a great conference. The food, catering, different elements are much below the standard that I've had at even meetups or anything else that I've done. I do hope though that the people, like in the same way I got value, I hope the people that were there got value. That's really the thing from my perspective. Honestly, just being there, meeting people made such an impact. Right. Yeah, like some people start seeing stuff. Phil from Netlify backed out as an MC. Yeah, I mean, Yeah, there was a bit of that going on. I feel like there's a justification while the conference is going on to try and make the best of it. But I also wonder if like organizers not also as earnestly trying to make the best of it. Like I don't know. I don't know. But yeah. Tickets, £699, I believe. And virtual were £42. Yeah. Some people tried to like hand record stuff, on phones and stuff, but yeah. 5 p.m. Yeah, 5 p.m. on Friday. So it was the second to last talk. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, the recording was kind of like the redeeming factor, and then when that didn't happen, as I said, there were so many points at which you think like you could like somehow redeem some, you know what I mean? And it didn't happen, so I don't know. Is it true there's no coffee? I'm not a coffee drinker, but there was like a tea time. The thing was like, I don't know if there's no coffee, but there was like maybe not in the morning. Like there was very specific time when you could eat, and it was like for a very short thing, and they brought out like the same stuff both days, and it was like, it was like I don't even know what to call it. It's like, it was just like sandwiches cut into fours, like 5 different types. That was the food, and then there's like a tea time. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I can't speak to that. Yeah, these links are great where people actually give more details. No coffee. That's the takeaway. They put pineapple on pizza. Yeah. There are some recordings floating around, and I know my talk was recorded on a phone. Fuzzy was actually playing with it, and he was like, "Oh man, it didn't come out as good as I hoped." So he's trying to like reconstruct something from my slides. I don't know. If he does that, he's amazing. But like honestly, it was what it is. Yeah. Okay, there you go. Like it was just because I remember I was talking to someone, and like if you miss that 45 minutes that there's lunch, like you just there's like no more food. Like bootleg tech talks. Yeah. So like I don't know. As I said, like it's hard because like from a what if standpoint, you can picture like how crazy things would have been different. But from like what I was doing, where I was, I had a very good time. As I said, the talk was good. I love this. This is one of those like Kent C. Dodd. I got a few quotes over time from people. I like to put them in articles sometimes, and I'm just like, the fist pump one. This one's one. This talk blew my mind. I think I finally get Solid.js, and I'm into it. I'm very impressed by how Ryan led us to it as well. Super well explained. This is a testimonial right there. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, but if you look at every single comment, it's like, is there any links? You can check out my Finland talk. That's probably the closest, but I think like I finally refined it because what happened was I wanted to make this talk more concise. I realized that it was too long, the explanation of Solid, and my inspiration came last minute. I was sitting there on after day one in the hotel at night, pretty late, and I'm like, how do I shrink this down? I wanted to get that movies demo in there to like showcase off like how cool it is and where hydration's heading in the future. And I'm like, how do I simplify it? And then React Brussels released Dan Jutanium's talk from the lightning round here. And again, people should check this out. I know I keep on telling people to check this out. This is probably one of the best like short introductions, like 10 minutes. We already have like short like introduction to reactivity. This is like that same thing, like 12 months later where it's refined and has so much in it. This is the best introduction to Solid ever, and I literally saw how he explained reactivity, looked at his slides, copied them the best I could, like with the animations and stuff in Google, whatever the presentation thing Google has, like Google Slides, and like that's how I did it. And I cut a part of my talk that's usually like 4 minutes down to like 1 minute, and found room for more demos. But it's all because of like how genius Dan figured out how to explain Solid. He literally does that thing where I walk through the JavaScript. It has a little bit less impact at points of not like building it fully, but he covers exact same content in like 3 or 4 minutes instead of like the like 10-12 minutes it usually takes me. It's very impressive. It's very understandable. Dan's kind of like a genius when it comes to this. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there because I was like stuck, and then I found the solution because this got published just in time. But like, this kind of all ties together to like where we are at now, because I just started. Yeah, actually, also at Modern Frontends, TRPC 10 was released, which is huge. But the reason I wanted to kind of get into this a little bit here is that like this comes to the conversation we were talking about a little bit earlier, where we were talking about like how hard it is for agnostic solutions. Like Tanner, he said the hardest part of Solid isn't Solid, it's the lack of granular reactivity found almost everywhere else we use. If we had truly reactive primitives from the start, it would be an easier transition. I'm very interested in making that if a reality. It's another great testimonial. Right, like what the thing is, what I'm starting to see is people recognizing that the core value of the primitives are very powerful and they want to build with them. It's just hard to like pull React along with it. But this is where we're working right now. This tweet is very relevant to what we were talking about before, and that's why I wanted to check it out. Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's a matter of like getting it. Like there are TRPC things with Solid, even with Solid Start. I think create JD app or something. Let me see if I can find it. Actually, you know what? We can probably find it off Twitter if I go to Solid's account. Give me a second. Because it's been a month, so there's a lot of stuff going on. And if I'm right, let me see here. Right as I did the beta announcement, create JD app. Solid Start based, Zod, Solid.js, TypeScript, optional atoms, Prisma, Upstash, TRPC, and Tailwind. It's basically create T3 app, but for Solid Start. So, yeah, I mean, we've built our own RPC mechanism in, but like as always, this is like a baseline for core mechanisms. TRPC has a much richer like piece to like orchestrate. Like, so if you can build with TRPC, you're already going to be like a leg up from people kind of manually building the stuff using our server functions. What I love about this, and I've seen this already from the T3 community, even talking to Christopher when I was in London, was like, even though there's like the React Solid difference, people don't notice that here because of like they're using the libraries that they're familiar with. Like it just feels like almost like create T3 app, except it's like Solid. Like you just kind of go in and go, okay, here's my Zod, here's my like it just kind of like it's got that kind of power. We're still working on like little kinks and stuff. I was helping debug some stuff this morning, but like, you know, the auth story, but like essentially this is very kind of powerful things, and you can do them today. I think people always underestimate our ecosystem, and it's like because of how easy it is to port React, like I guess there's some animation libraries missing. We have like Motion 1, we don't have Framer. And there's probably some like people were working in Solid area, so there are like some accessibility things that we could do better. But like the random stuff, you're probably going to find libraries for that, right? Right. So like I think this is very, very cool. Right. So anyway, sorry, jumping back a little bit here, but yeah, it's really cool to see parts of the ecosystem kind of understand that this is a change. I showed this a while ago about like the Angular guys calling like signals the new VDOM. Like this is a shift in architecture, a shift in changing, right? Okay, how about using multiple Cloudflare workers to stitch together multiple frameworks? This is really cool. Cloudflare guys have been playing with Quick a lot to do like micro front-end architectures, and this time they decided to put Solid into their crazy experiments. Let me see if I can find the demo here. I want to show this for a second because maybe it's at the end. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna have to log in. I'll give myself a name, Ryan. Okay, do I have a password? Okay, there we go. So this is a quick app, right? I think, and then this is a React app, and then you can guess what the Solid one is. Hacker News, anyone? But what I love about this app is you can control stuff, so you can actually like refresh the app and like start navigating around Hacker News before the outer app actually updates. So it's kind of cool showing like these regions of like micro frontends that can work independently. So that, like this is using multiple Cloudflare workers to stitch multiple apps together, and the stitching happens server side, and I guess client side. And it's very similar to the technique we actually used at eBay of using HTML as communicator, but I think it's cool that they're building it in a way that like anyone can use it is the thing. This is a very kind of cool thing. I'm not a big fan of micro front ends, like don't use them unless you need them kind of thing, and that's like hopefully never. But in terms of like how they should be done, this is very compelling. Yeah, but there's a different expectation there for micro front end. You want complete isolation. You're not building a UI together, so to speak. Like micro front ends look kind of like islands, but like you actually probably want a stronger isolation contract with micro front ends. There are similarities mechanically, but for me, like I don't really. The goals are very different. But yeah, some of the problems you have to solve might be similar too, right? How do you communicate between micro front ends, islands, or whatnot? But like you can use islands as like a quick micro front end thing, but like the problem is like it's a piece that they're missing. Like you could author stuff independently, then bring it into like an Astro app, and then have islands and like have them work. But it's like maybe it's a mono repo, so you could like kind of do it. But the more important part of micro front ends is separating the end user work so that teams don't have to like constantly talk to each other, rather than actually like what gets displayed on the screen, so to speak. And what's key about this one is this is a server driven approach using edge workers. So very, very cool tech demo that I wanted to kind of give a shout out to, because like yeah, like I mean, this kind of stuff's cool. This is stuff that I want to play with more with Dino when I get a chance. I was actually talking to Luca about like what we could do, So, yeah, very, very, very cool thing. And I managed to sneak that one in there. Where are we? Okay, I gotta give this one a shout out. State of JavaScript 2022. Fill the survey out. It helps people. Helps frameworks. Helps. I don't know how we got on the list last year. I always laugh about that, but go fill it in. It was way better. Last year it crashed like every time I tried to open it. This year got through, and I was able to fill out the form after spending a ton of time putting in the free field for like at the end where there's a people field where you just like put anyone you follow that does good stuff. I was just like typing forever, and then I still forgot people, and then I went back and was able to add more people, and I did that twice. So like yeah, the site's way better this year. That's nice. That's higher than me. I got I usually get pretty high in the 90s. This year I got 89. I think there's a couple things I didn't really know about. Yeah, sorry if you didn't see it, Kent did his blog on Modern Front Ends live, so this is a good read as well about the topic we were talking about before. Yeah, there's a couple more things I want to get to, and uh, before, like, I'm just doing a couple randoms right now. Another one I want to point out. You know what? Actually, we'll come back here. Um, let's 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 continue on to what I wanted to. Where is it? My bookmarks. It's always fun when you're in like this zoomed in view. Um, let's start with this one. Dan Abramoff did another one of his classic "Ask Me Anythings" kind of things. You know, he likes to do those from time to time on Twitter. And he someone was like, more instead of just asking what he thought of Svelte, they're like, "Oh, React or Svelte, what do you prefer about each and why?" I love this response. I hope everyone who watches my stream loves this response. In React, I like that I can write components as functions, many in one file, and use JS syntax instead of templates. Honestly, I kind of hate templates. Never want to go back. Okay. In Svelte, I like that there's less syntactic noise. Also, no runtime reactivity compared to some others. Zing. Like, some of you may be like, well, what does he mean by runtime reactivity? Well, he means like solid. Or like Vue, or like signals and Preact or whatever. Like, yeah. I was like, I couldn't pay Dan to put out more tweets like this. I'm loving this. Know why? Because like, there was a while there where people were like, oh, React's just gonna like absorb what you're doing, right? You know, like, why would I bet on Solid or something? You know, like, React will find the hole and they'll just plug it, and we'll just continue on. And it's like, no, like, you don't understand how much they are like not into this. We're like as diametrically opposed as you can be while agreeing on like values and stuff. Like, this is why it's like a 4-quadrant, like a 2-axis grid. Right? Every time I show the grid, people are all like, "What? Like, what are you talking about, Ryan? You're being very vague." But like, what's wrong with runtime reactivity? Oh man. Okay. I don't know all of his gripes, but a lot of it is like they're very functionally program oriented. And runtime, he's talking about auto dependency tracking reactivity. I think he was trying to figure out like the right term to use for it, because like Svelte's dependencies are compiled in. It's almost like you took React's dependency arrays and actually compiled them and hid them. That's how Svelte works. So I talked about how they're similar, where like dynamic tracking ones actually change dynamically based on what runs. And it's kind of like their like view of the world of like the immutable cloning and stuff is very fixed in this kind of functional, everything's immutable, re-render, memoize kind of pattern that they do. And reactivity is kind of like the opposite side, especially runtime reactivity. It's around mutable internals and like I mean, that's not even completely true, because like the signal itself is an immutable switch, but like essentially it's almost like diametrically opposed in like the view of what the component is and what their functional purity is and whatnot. It's like why Solid and React are so different. Yes, a React compiler would be very similar to Svelte. Yes, that's why like The only difference is they'd probably still generate a VDOM. Like they're not going to like go straight to DOM. But like, yes, it's still like this component reruns kind of thing. People don't realize that Svelte isn't really fine-grained. So it's like the state is still owned by the components, and the components rerun. Whereas like in Vue, and I guess Preact and Quick, the components, even though the components rerun, they're like triggered by the reactivity that's permissive. It's kind of like a state library being jammed on. In Solid's case, it's literally the renderer is the reactive system. So it's like the purest form of the opposite side of things. So like, yeah, I mean, some push-pull isn't bad, except for like, our reactivity is actually a hybrid. It's like push-pull. Like typical push-based reactivity is stuff like RxJS. And you could say that React is like very much on the pull side. Like you trigger something and go, something's changed now, like let's pull the values we need as we rerun it and memoize and like do that. Sorry, I'm not being clear. Solid's actually a hybrid approach. So like, is push versus pull isn't even fully applicable, but it is mostly that. Yeah, more or less. Like what Svelte does. Sorry, give me 2 seconds. I can show you really quick. Is like it does split the components into multiple parts, but it's like a class component. So you can write something like this in Svelte, and then what you end up on the end is this class component, right? And this is what they actually minify to. But if we do something like make it, where is it? There's a version. Maybe it's dev, makes it human readable. You'll see it converts your code here into a class. It's like create, claim. I'm not sure what that is exactly. Mount, maybe claims for hydration. Destroy. They essentially compile your code into a class component, and then like when you update a value. So let's see if I can do this. On click equals what do we do here? Something like name plus exclamation mark. Okay, sure. What they end up doing, and we get a few more things now, is what you're going to see is that click handler names capture state if name prop. They call set state here. Sorry, invalidate, but they basically call set state. And what this does is go component rerun your render function essentially. Like so like because they've separated into a class and it's not like React's crazy hook rules, you're not gonna have to deal with like life cycles getting in your way like you have to do with React. But more or less, you can kind of view Svelte as like class components. Sorry, maybe I should have blew that up to make it more obvious. I'm sorry. Hopefully that makes sense. So, yeah. I kind of joked about how Preact signals were like a Trojan horse. That's something I want to explore more, actually. My talks with Tanner, we were like, well, what if we let you write solid? Like, there's already React solid state, but what if we took it further? Like, what if we actually made a React compiler with solid syntax? So you can actually like, literally write solid and then have it output React. Like, sure, you don't get the benefits from a performance standpoint, but people could start converting all their code into solid for the DX win inside React, and then like pull the blanket out later. That was one of our conversations. Yeah, I mean, this is in my talk too. Like, this is like, like if you're gonna point at Svelte's equal sign versus set state, like you're pointing at the wrong thing. They're the same thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It just, I want to make very clear that React and Solid are not that like this. You know, as I said, I couldn't pay Dan to write this stuff. Like, this is like the best fuel that I have. Is there mitosis solid? You write in solid and then convert to others. Mitosis. Sorry, JSX Lite. Mitosis started its life as exactly this. It was called JSX Lite, and it was actually based on solid. It even had like the 4 components in the state. Like it was literally this. They shifted more to React syntax because of usage, and that's when it became mitosis. But technically, the original version of mitosis was solid to everyone else, and it was called JSX Lite. Yeah, yeah, and that's the challenge. Preact signals, like, it's funny. Like on my scale of things, I feel like, and I know this isn't most people. Like I feel like Preact signals approach and like what Quick's doing on the reactivity is only like 20% of it. It's good that they're on the right path and like they're on reactivity. But when I look at the spectrum of like what you can do with it, it feels like that's 20%. And but it's also why you can make the easy shift. You can get in there and you can just do it, right? But like there's a lot of caveats around those APIs and the trade-offs that come, which I've covered in previous streams. So like I'm glad that we're starting to get in there and people play with this stuff because of I think when they try stuff like pre-active signals, they're gonna like see. Like I'm hoping they don't walk away and go, oh, there's the good parts and the awkward parts. I hope they actually like see more, so they're like, oh, I wish it did this little thing, and then they'll see solid and like, oh, it does that thing. Like that. That's the sort of thing. The monkey patch is just it does, but it's a very specific kind of thing that I like. It doesn't bug me much. Like it's like pretend you could wrap a component around an attribute. So if you pass a signal all the way through right to the DOM, they just intercept and they go, okay, what's this value in my VDOM? And they're like, oh, it's a signal. Okay, well, I'm just going to update that independently, like wrap it in a component. That's essentially the mental model. The downside is that you have to be aware of signals throughout your whole tree. So now suddenly you have like two classes, like is a signal, not a signal? Like from an author composition pattern standpoint, it's a little bit awkward. And then like, when you got there and you're like, oh, I want to transform it. Well, but now I need to compute it. So you start bringing in more reactive overhead on top of your VDOM. So there's like a performance trade-off if you author completely that way, but you'll get wins on like the really small things like doing like a specific animation or something, which is a classic slowdown on a VDOM. So like it might be a good trade-off, but like that's kind of like the scenario there. It might be. And it's funny you guys are kind of talking about this because I've been thinking a lot about the DX here, and I'm always kind of playing around with like crazy ideas in my head, and maybe I'll talk about more in a minute. But yeah, actually maybe now is we'll see where we get. It's just because like we talked about Astro a bunch, and we talking about like this kind of, I think Astro, and my conversation with Dan, I think Astro gets so many things right, and that it ties into that conversation where I was saying like, who else is like, even though I wouldn't call like huge success like as of yet, they've made people like partial hydration without realizing it. Compared to stuff like Marco or React Server Components or even Quick, no one else has actually succeeded at this. And then you start thinking about what makes Astro feel so good. And like part of it is that it's built for the purpose. Like the second I saw it's not me actually. I gotta give Ben Holmes credit here. The second he saw async await in the server components RFC, he's like, kind of like top level await in Astro. And I don't know if everyone made the connection there, but I immediately did. I'm like, yes, Ben, that is exactly what you're looking at. And like when you start like kind of working through that, and I was like listening to like Dan, something came kind of obvious to me, and maybe this is my hot take. Yeah, here's my hot take. If React has sort of a weak spot, like a blinders, it's the fact that like they don't really see innovation elsewhere in the ecosystem as being related to the innovation that they're doing. Like, don't get me wrong. They give credit where credit's due for their inspirations. Like, when they released hooks, you can still find it to this day. Like there's like prior art or something, right? And in the hooks FAQ, you'll see like, let's see, prior art for hooks. Here it is. They'll credit some React future thing. They'll talk about some stuff Ryan Florence did, DOM from Inferno, adopt keyword, reducer components. They even mentioned RX a bit for subscriptions, Albert. But like, in my opinion, they missed what is kind of like the most obvious thing, because it didn't inspire them. But like, how could you possibly ignore this? They didn't talk about like fine-grained reactivity, stuff like that's in Knockout or Vue or whatever. The stuff that was like on the opposite side of where they're going, like the thing they felt like they were competing with. They didn't give that any. And the thing is, most developers, when they look at React hooks, they're like, they see reactivity. Like that's why when people come in, they're like, oh, solid. It's like what I thought React did. Like I thought that's what the point was, that it would work like this. That's what, when I saw hooks, I was expecting it to work this way. Instead, React told me it works a different way. When I come to Solid, it's working the way that I would have expected it to work. And this is like a blind spot that I feel like they have here, because like, even though they credit where their inspirations are, they don't actually like look wider at people solving the same problems and what they've learned. And I feel like they've done this again with server components. I feel like they basically were like, oh, like we'll see if prior art comes out for them. But like, they're like, no, this is our big thing that we innovated. But like, server components and islands and partial hydration are like the same thing, like so much the same thing. If you've been following my stream, that like you need to acknowledge that like the new React server components is wrapping an existing framework with an old framework. And I feel like that attempt, which if you think funny, that's like the description of what Astro is, that attempt of trying to mask that, make it all React like, do all that for that purposes, make it fit within React shell, is going to be the same blind spot, in the same way that the second everybody saw hooks, they were like not everyone, but like the people on the reactive side, like Evan Yu, Rich Harris, myself even, we're like, wait a second, ours are maybe better? Like this is our pattern. And I think with server components, even though they do something technically different, it's not something out of the reach of Astro. I've already shown that with my Solid Movies demo. Like you can take something like Islands and make server components out of it. With the right pieces. That's what I've been building, right? The nested routing, nested server rendered client routing, all those pieces together, islands, we can build that experience. But without acknowledging that or understanding their place in the ecosystem that way, they hit the same thing again. And I mean, I'd argue about the foot gun being client load, but yes, essentially, Astro has been very successful at just coming in and being like, hey, what are we building for? We're building for that case. They're already where that new framework is. They're not trying to like mutate their old framework to play to it. Like the problem with React server components right now is like, okay, no one wanted the extension. I get it. But the thing is, because it's like too much file changing, but like if you package up React server components, you're going to be adding use client all over the place. Like you have to change your existing code to facilitate the new framework. Like that's where the friction is. It's not a hard work. You can just go do it if you understand what you're doing. But I think those boundaries are harder to understand. One of the benefits of Astro's model, not that it doesn't have trade-offs, was that people like took the components as they were, and the boundaries on the outside. Right? Like the thing is, if you're moving to a world of automation like Quick and Marco 6 and stuff, and even Marco 5 has automation, Marco 4 had automation, like whatever. I'm sorry, digress a bit. But like if you're moving to the world of automation, having the boundaries on the inside is kind of good, because you're going to like get more optimal of reducing those boundaries. But if that's never the goal, the outside actually might make more sense. So like, I'm just going to put it out there that I think that Astro does an incredible job of just like going like, look, like I started thinking about it even more. I was like, okay, if I want to do my PHP thing, do I care that there's multiple functions in the folder? Like, no, I'm freaking templating. Like there's no state. Like when you're not dealing with state, your criteria for your authoring experience changes considerably. Right? Like Solid might detach state from components to the point that like it's in your control, but recognizing that, basically is that you still make boundaries because at a certain amount of like logical in your brain, it makes sense usually because of state, because of like how you want to, like there's a reusability aspect, but it's usually tied to like units of change. You don't have to do it for performance. You don't have to do it because like, okay, now there's a for loop. I need to like make one per row or whatever. But you do it because like logically, this is the grouping. There's some kind of interaction, some kind of state, you put it together. But on a server rendered part, like the server component thing, that I don't think that's the case anymore. So like maybe a single file component kind of mechanism that uses JSX is a brilliant way to do server components. Maybe top level await is async await. Like maybe all that noise goes away because literally the beginner comes in and they're writing HTML or JSX or whatever it is. And like that's the starter position because that's how you should view JavaScript as an add-on. Astro hits every one of those marks. So we were talking about DX, right? I think us client-side framework people who are so up our own trying to figure out how to unify our picture need to look a little bit wider. Yeah, but in the same way that I want to go back to my Scala draw here. Well, the one thing that I didn't include here is that every single page app gets served from a server. So technically speaking, an MPA to SPA switch at a hard line is something that you can do with anything. So like in Astro, you can literally like do MPA, get here, put a single page app, like make your solid app. I know people have done this. Like the solid Astro, thing is real. So like people like put full solid single page apps in Astro. They don't get the benefits of the single page app framework, like and people are going to do stuff like that with TanStack, you bet. But like they don't get like the, unless someone builds out that tooling the way Tanner is, you don't get the benefits that you get from like a solid starter svelte kit. Like it's just not as integrated. It's like you leave the happy Astro place to like the Wild West place. And like the whole reason that I'm making solid starter or something like that is because people need help on that part. Even if I don't like being too opinionated, there's still necessity of needing help. And I think with this model, though, this is true. So I don't know if Astro could jump to this model exactly. I think that this model requires explicit knowledge of the client components, but if we can figure out how to do it with primitives, I think it's possible. But I just want to point out that Astro's DX is exactly where it needs to be for people just rendering pages. And I think that's true across the whole spectrum here. So, decide what you will on that and what I'm saying, but like where I'm sitting at least, I think it's very compelling to look at what we can actually learn from stuff like Astro, in terms of even our fancy cross the spectrum apps. Okay, there's my thing. Don't be surprised if you see me playing with Astro's file format. Okay, right? Like, in a sense, like I'm lazy, especially on that stuff. Like that's the side that I don't like dwelling on. Rich Harris is a genius when it comes to syntax and all that stuff. I don't want to deal with it. I want the mechanical pieces. And it's funny because people go, okay, then you're not very DX oriented. No, I recognize what's good. I just have to. It's always like an analysis on me on how it interlies with like what can work with UX. I'm not going to like die on a hill about specific syntax, but mechanically, you start thinking about it and what it means to the developer. I think it's huge. Well, I mean, we couldn't compete there. That was the problem. When Astro first came out and we tried to talk about it, like we were like, no, we do stuff different than Next because we want to differentiate. And I know I'm not on the Astro team. I feel this because I was Marco and we were doing the same kind of conversations. But everyone's like, oh yeah, so like Next. I'm like, no, not like Next. Next does not do this. Yeah, like Next server renders and I can do like multi-page apps and Next. I'm like, not the same thing. So yeah, I mean, I think I think they were smart, and I think this is a spectrum that they're going to continue exploring. My biggest challenge always is that the same thing I brought up with the Tanner quote is that like Solid's approach is uniquely different enough than everyone else that it's very hard for agnostic solutions to bet on us because they have to cater to the popular things, and because they keep on not being able to bet on us completely, we end up having to build it on the Solid side, and I hate doing it because like it's so much extra work to maintain and do it. But I feel like when we get there, we end up with like a better product. So it's like, you know, maybe it's just a matter of time. So, yes, do stores and context work? Yes, yes, definitely. Um, There are some tricks to get around the routing side, but yeah, you can put a provider up at top. You have to put it in the right place. You have to put it outside of the routes component, and it'll all work. It can also work within specific routes. Yeah, we'll see where it goes. But the thing is, like, it's such it is a bit of a shift. Even though I just told you how easy it is to port React, the port has to happen, and React is not going this way. This is just not happening. I wonder who quote tweeted this. Not for me, but nice ass. Okay, Dan quoted himself. Okay. What else do we got here? I want to talk about this in a minute. Okay, who wants a funny story? Svelte jumped way up because our guessing someone screwed up their CI. And actually, if you look at the quote tweets today, they have now passed React on downloads this week because of this crazy runaway CI. I was kind of hoping we overtake React before the support npm figures out which needs leaking. But actually, I think he might have been in his reply. It just happened. Svelte overtook React on npm downloads this week. I thought this was the reason that this is hilarious from my perspective isn't because of this happened. Like this can happen, but I gotta ask you guys. Like, many of you are Theo fans. You watch Theo streams. Why is Theo, like, why was Theo the one who broke this news? Why? Do you think he was like he like regularly checks on Svelte npm downloads? This was actually really. I mean, it's not a funny story. It's just right. No, I mean, what was actually happening was he just finished his talk with Alex Russell, and Nikhil, myself, Theo, and Mark headed back to Theo's place to hang out for a little bit before I head back to San Jose. And we were literally talking about the stuff we talked about on stream, talking about Tanner, talking about Kent, talking about like the perception around Solid and where it is, and talking about, you know, how continuous growth at GitHub stars, you know, we're at like almost, I guess, like 24,000. And he's like, how's the downloads going? And I'm like, you know, we're getting somewhere like 50K a week, roughly. So like about 200K a month, you know, it's big up for us, right? And then he's like, okay, so then he's like, well, it's like, yeah, so yeah, how does that compare to Svelte? So we were actually sitting there like trying to like gauge Solid's growth against Svelte when this actually came up. And I was confused. I didn't see this line because he like pulled it up on his computer, and I'm like, what? Did someone like delete Svelte's npm? Because I was like, I thought like I thought this was like flatlined on the bottom. I'm like, did the history get deleted? But yeah, I mean, he's like, sorry, Ryan, I can't talk right now. I need the tweet. And I'm like, what? And he's like, just a second. So he went and proceeded, and then anyway. But so, that is the story of this tweet. Not the most interesting story, but it was just 'cause we're sitting there trying to like figure out like where solids sat in the world. Anyway, it's not a CI bug; it's a for loop. But yeah, I mean, you ever wonder like how trustworthy npm download numbers are, or where things sit? I don't know. I don't even trust our own numbers. So stuff like this can definitely happen in spikes. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see how long this goes on for. But it's definitely fun for everyone involved to see Svelte overtake React on downloads for the week of November 21st. Signals are everywhere. Does that mean you next to plug to other frameworks appear? Potentially, but I think again, a lot of Solid's uniqueness is because it's rendering. Like, it's that we treat signals differently than everyone else. If people are willing to go all the way, like Vue Vapor, for example, I see that path forward. But we'll have to see. I'm not as convinced. Like, if you talk to Mishko and stuff, he's always like, no framework can do what Quick does. And I'm like, well, maybe. There is an ecosystem consideration there. But sometimes I wonder, like, if you're just playing percentages and find a ways to make peripheral wins in the same areas, like, that are somewhat related, like, maybe it's enough. Like, maybe the signal stuff, but Preact's doing now plus, like, another 20% somewhere is enough to, like, you don't have to go all the way. But we're going to have to see. Yeah. Basically, you basically reset the ecosystem, right? It's not even the rewrite; it's the reset the ecosystem, because, like, you have to. The biggest thing is it's the lazy loading, right? Like the mechanism of doing the chunking it, and like it makes every boundary async, which is an interesting challenge. Okay, so that only leaves I think one more thing here. I think I saw Shai in chat. Hey Shai, how you doing? Obviously, earlier in the stream, I showed my movies demo article. Let me see if I can pull it up again. My article was not really focused on performance benchmarks. This is still new. As I mentioned, we got like 92 without trying, and then I optimized the images and I got 99. We still have more work to do. I was like sitting on this yesterday after I saw the builder article. I'm like, oh, people are going to make the comparison. I better like see if I can do some performance optimizations on the solid one, because like people will be like, yours is 99 and it has less JavaScript than Quick. Why is Quick's 100? And it's like, trying to explain that is going to be complicated, because it's and I guess here we are, but I was hoping that I could just like get the 100 like and just like move on, but then I found bugs in Solid Start, and then here we are. But what I was focusing on this was like, how can you do client routed experience, and how small you can make this into impact. So you obviously get great loading, and you get like you get full client side interactive experiences. As I said, I'm very glad that Quick actually changed their demo here, because the original version was not really showing Quick. It had single page app, but as I said, you don't really use Quick for single page apps. It just doesn't really make sense where they are today. I think that will change. They are working on some container stuff, but we're still figuring out the patterns here. But what's cool about this one is that skipping all that stuff. It's interesting. I actually did spend some time benchmarking it, and this sort of led into where I was talking about. If you saw here, I was struggling with this out of order streaming thing. I benched this a while ago, but essentially when I was trying to optimize the solid demo, I was like, oh, I should put streaming in, and it made my Lighthouse score worse. I'd get like 98s because the blocking time would go up from like green, like a 120 or something, to like maybe into the oranges. And it was because of like what does out of order add? It just swaps the content in place. But what I was seeing in Lighthouse was it wasn't affecting my simulated slowdown page load scores. And the reason for that is because Lighthouse kind of puts a fixed buffer on asset loading. So the whole benefit of streaming the head content sooner, like with like the like the preload assets and stuff, is basically completely lost. So you only see the negative. So this is where I was like struggling, because I'm like, I was playing with the out of order version of the demo, and I was like, this feels faster. It is faster, like running it without slowdown. It's just like clearly Lighthouse doesn't want to award me for it. And then I actually went to web page test and tried it on like a slow 3G network, and sure enough, it was faster than our current movies demo. Like it just felt better. You could just tell on that initial load that it was a little bit faster, but Lighthouse actually scores it worse. So that was something that, this is why I was writing this yesterday, because it was like, oh, man, this is kind of annoying. So yeah, if you want to see, this is the builder article. And like the first thing that's interesting is like quick is fast, and the problem is most of these other ones are actually like single page apps in this comparison timeline. So like the first thing I wanted you to notice is actually where quick falls on the rendering time, because ultimately the difference between the solid demo and the quick demo was nothing to do with hydration in terms of scoring, or very little. It had everything to do with like some loading stuff. I wasn't doing the preload properly with the certain islands, like there's a bug, but like, and in the quick demo inlined the CSS. It did have lower blocking time, but it wasn't like affecting the total time loading on the timelines. And that's the thing when you start getting to, when you get into demos like this, and you're like talking about like, because every run, like I ran quick like a bunch of times, and sometimes it was 100, sometimes it was 99, like sometimes 98, like it varies run to run. It's all these like, what's good about this demo is we're finally getting to a threshold where it's like almost good enough to actually look at the cost of assets and all that kind of stuff. Like it's right on the threshold. A lot of the demos we do are it's way too simple, to the point that like you should get hundreds with your eyes closed. This one's like you should get like, in the high 90s with your eyes closed. So it's hard to act as a differentiator, because the actual differences are not like what you're measuring or not. Like, because like, here we go. Google gave these all like, there's not really much of a difference on Google's page speed here. Total blocking time. Yeah, I don't know. I think they updated these charts or something, because I think this was different before. Because probably the Astro demo was actually written using Alpine JS. Astro plus Alpine. I don't know that. That's not the combo I tend to use. Right? Like with Astro. So like, these aren't always the best examples. They're all a little different. But like everybody's basically 100 on this. Like the quick team didn't point out about like not having to optimize much, but like because I saw the original version of the app, they did change it. Like someone in the community built the app one way, and then they were like, no, we should build it the other way. So like, I don't know if like the problems our demos just aren't conclusive enough, but this is a very good show of where the faster like start seeing where the divergence happens. This is right on the threshold of where you can start seeing the cost of stuff and like the difference between next and whatnot. Like stuff like this, because this is an MPA, like there is basically no JavaScript cost. I don't know what this Alpine app is, but like I think the challenge here, and this is probably going to be one of the challenges for marketing quick with this stuff, is like when Mishko changed, originally it was loading JavaScript. I told you it was like the other version, and then so it was also loading JavaScript initially, and then he changed it to like loading 0 kilobytes of JavaScript. And I said to Mishko, I'm like, did changing that affect the score at all? Like, did it actually change anything on performance? And he's like, no. So like the fact that it was loading like 20 kilobytes of JavaScript or 0 kilobytes of JavaScript, or 30, like I think it was 30 and 0, made basically no difference. So like it's kind of like what Quick's doing here is actually prefetching stuff in the background if it needs to. In this app, it probably didn't need to do very much because it's an MPA app. But like this is kind of like the difficult of using the current metrics for it. Like quite often we see I've seen this chart a few times. I don't know where it is, but like I wrote an article a while ago. Some people might have seen it because it's funny. One thing that I noticed at Modern Frontends is like 3 of the talks use my benchmarks as ways of like explaining their points in terms of benchmarks. My benchmarks are starting to go around. I made this is based on Evan Yu's work to show how components scaled on size using To-Do MVC. And to be fair, To-Do MVC is a whole app. So in my head, even though I say 80 components, I'm like, these are bigger components. A lot of components are smaller, like, give or take, it might actually be more components than this is suggesting. But if you graph out these trend lines, you can see that like Svelte ends up surpassing the others when you get to a fairly large app, and the other ones are all kind of the same. React just starts like with a bigger, like it doesn't have as much of a head start. And then someone will go and they'll take Quick or Marco 6. I did this myself on stream. I'm guilty of this, and draw like a straight line along the bottom, or maybe try to do steps or something. But the problem is the graph is a lie. Like essentially, it's not like if you need interactivity, you need interactivity. Like if you need 80 components that are interactive on your page, then you need all of this JavaScript. You probably don't need 80 components that are these interact on the page, but the problem is a graph like that can never show that delta. So like this is the challenge that we're getting to now, because even if people aren't saying it, I think they're starting to conceptually, like, this is where the challenges on talking about this stuff, because like there is a benefit here, but we can't use the graphs that we've been using, because the fact that this, like, there's more than just the initial page load, which we'll say, but like the difference between, like, I think if someone authored Astro in a slightly different way, it would also have nothing like Quick here. Like, it doesn't, it depends on the implementation. It depends on details that are just like not purely on the academic theoretical side of things. It's just like, it really comes down to what you chose to do on this specific app. Right. I think Quick's right. That's a good argument. This is back to my graph here, right? That's a very good argument if you're living further over on this side. But let me throw another one out, because and more representative of that zero line that Quick shows. What if there isn't those 80 components all the time, and you're like something simpler on this side, like e-commerce side, and there aren't those, and you've already eliminated 70 of those components. You just got the last 10. Like, who cares? Right? Like, don't get me wrong, resumability is important because you don't execute the JavaScript, but loading those 10 components, like, no one cares. Like, don't execute them, but I think that's sort of what I'm saying. It depends on where you sit on the spectrum, but this is why the charts aren't doing it, because like this is where the challenge is, because like it doesn't actually, like, in the same way that Mishko went to 0 or didn't go to 0 initially, didn't make a difference. How much of that range where that doesn't actually make a difference? So I'm big on resumability, but this is where I wanted to actually like, there's challenges and trade-offs in resumability, but this is what I wanted to kind of talk about in terms of the lazy loading story, because when I see a chart like this, like, I'm like, oh, so it's a static site, essentially. It's an MPA. Like, it doesn't, unless you show interaction. That's why when I was writing my article, I was like, I was trying, in the one I had on dev over here, I was kind of like, not this one, but this one. I was kind of like, okay, I actually navigated around the app to see the cost. That this was more of a single page app thing. That's why I don't have quick in here. It doesn't make sense once they change the demo. But like, what I'm getting at is like, we need new metrics or ways to gauge what's relevant about this. I love stuff like imp, and I love that the fact that the quick version of this page is actually super performant. So like, if you go and try it, or like lighthouse it, you'll definitely feel the speed, and you'll definitely like understand that this is a good page. I'm just saying, like, it's hard to figure out the depiction of what actually matters here, right? Because like, is it how fast the server renders? Does the hydration part actually have any impact on the story? In fact, I think it has almost none. But this is a freaking sweet demo. If you know what I mean, like, you know, it's where is it? Can I see the demo somewhere? Taste movies comparison. Yeah, here it is. It's right, like, that page loads pretty fast. You can see the it's an MPA. You can see the arrow X change. When I click into it, when I do the search, I press the button, it does a page reload. It's interesting. I guess they didn't end up doing a kind of debounced auto thing, but like, as I mentioned before, like, no one's suffering Astro in this kind of scenario either, right? Right. This is sort of, these apps are almost too simple to kind of see the difference, right? If you go here, you do this, like, is this, like, obviously that thing's distracting the line, but is this, now we got like slightly faster client rendering. You can kind of feel that the navigation's slightly faster, but like, it's not client rendering, but it's like, it's just not, you know what I mean? Like, these are all fast sites, right? That's a solid one with using single page navigations. And then like, actually, let's see if we can find the Astro one. I think it's on the Taste movie. I just want to kind of like, the challenge here is like, what's being shown is a fast demo, but the correlation, okay, so the Astro one is a little different. It doesn't have search, it looks like. Movies, TV shows. But like, what I'm getting at is like, the correlation isn't necessarily the correlation, but it tells a good story. And this is a challenge that I think we're going to have moving forward, because it's like, it's not clear what factors actually lead to it. Because if you, as I said, if you benchmark it on the hydration cost, you're not going to see practically any difference between these approaches, except you're going to see, it looks like Quick's rendering for this is actually pretty fast. So, you know, maybe worth looking into what happened there. But like, you know what I mean? This is the challenge we face these days. Sorry, MPA, not NPA, MPA, like MPA, multi-page app. Anyway, yeah, I that was my little bit on this article, because I think this is I think that's a hot demo. You know, it's good, it shows good performance. I also think the client routed version of it also is pretty hot because it's kind of like best of both worlds. But I think that like we still need better ways to measure this and figure out what this actually looks like when we move along this scale of where we're sitting at, because simple sites like that movie site, which I guess you consider like a content site, essentially, like it's like here, we're not gonna like see the differences, right? Unless like it's subtle stuff like feature, like architecturally feature things like doing cool client-side transitions because you're client navigating versus MPA navigating. Like that's the only kind of difference you're gonna see, or shared element transitions and stuff like that. Like you're not gonna, because like loading the page and navigating is all you're doing. It's gonna be lightweight as long as you do it performantly. So, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if this is. I think with the service worker stuff they've gone past it. I always have my service worker off so I don't see it, but the prefetching, like they prefetch very aggressively, kind of addresses this problem. I think the lazy loading stuff got oversold early, and I don't think that's where we end up. And so much so that I don't even think it's actually that important unless you're trying to improve the loading speed of, say, something over here like the Figmas of the world. If you need to improve the loading speed of Figma, then it'd be interesting to benchmark it and see the difference. But I think that's kind of like interesting because you can have multiple solutions cover wide ranges of the spectrum and still have to kind of talk about the architecture thing. So unfortunately you can't simplify stuff necessarily, but it's worth, you know, it's worth at least talking about. Anyway, I don't know. I think that is really honestly most of what I wanted to talk about today. Did anyone else have any cool news stuff that they saw that they thought was cool, wanted to talk about? I should actually check chat and make sure people are still alive on Twitch, in case someone might have secretly subbed without me knowing. Also, remind people that they should like the video. Apparently, that's how you get people to watch your stuff. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. A short one today, unless anyone has anything specific. I think we're all pretty good, eh? Chat has slowed down. All right, someone wanted to ask me about WASM. Okay, let me dig for a couple quick questions to kind of end off here. I Yeah, I updated from single page to MPA after you streamed with Theo. Yeah, it was the right move completely. I think quick today you don't want to use a single page app. I think the experience is so much better with the new version of the app. It meant that I couldn't put in my comparison anymore, but it is definitely like that. It's a nice feeling app. Dig deeper. Okay, yeah. Let's. I love Michael's work. Let me see if I can find that tweet. Sorry, the links I have to get through that way. Let me see. Yeah, is he just showing that? Is he just showing that stuff like just it just varies, or? I mean, let me see here. These scores look where I'd expect. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what the comment is, but there is variance in here. Like let's see here. Oh, interesting. He's got like a spreadsheet that actually like, triggers the stuff in the background. Oh, this is wild. Okay. Huh. Cool. Anyway, sorry, I got distracted with that. Sorry, I should have shared it on screen. You guys are probably like, "What are you talking about, Ryan?" I just got distracted. Yeah, my bad. Um, Sorry, what I was showing is that there's this spreadsheet that you run, and then like it literally runs the page stuff in the background and fills in the table. I just ran it, which is why it's not there, but it's basically you put in the URL and then it fills it out and makes the table and everything. But yeah, I didn't see what his complaint was. My understanding is like there's probably just variance in the stuff. So anyway. Oh yeah, question about self start. What's your opinion on Theo's point about some issues inconsistent with syntax and self start in the view you had? Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one. What's being asked specifically is that we've been. It's funny. This is actually somewhat quick inspired. We were working on those server functions, and for those of you who don't know, server functions, it's probably easiest to just go to solidjs.com and find our very hidden blog section. And server functions are like a type safe way of essentially like writing a function that always runs on the server. So you do this and then you get greeting out and then you can just like run it anywhere, client or server, and it just works. And it's like type checked. And what Theo's comment was that we kind of had this convention using the $sign inspired by Quick, essentially that like the problem with this, or the thing with this, is you have to be aware that like in this boundary this runs on the server, so you can't like put it in a component and have to like read props in here and have it work, because like the props don't exist when you just run this function on the server, so it gets hoisted out essentially. And we made the convention into a few loader functions where the first function is the function that gets hoisted out, and then you can like do whatever you want. And Theo was commenting that like he wasn't clear which things like were on the server and which things weren't. I get the confusion, and it's something that I've considered in terms of like best patterns and examples of how I show it. On the other hand, like there is a very clear definition here that like once you know it just works. So I think it's interesting reviewing the APIs from a sense that would encourage people to not like have to like split their mind thinking, like passing stuff in and stuff. But on the other hand, I think that like this is one of those examples where like that's what it does. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, okay. Yeah, here's what I wanted to touch on. If you convert, this is about making solid and quick, kind of the same thing. If you converted every single import to a dynamic one and added a few global event listeners at the root, you could get close to quick, right? Not, I mean, you'd have to break stuff up much smaller if you want to do what quick was actually doing. I think that if you had islands that were resumable, then like maybe the data loading part doesn't matter. But generally speaking, you need to slice stuff up pretty small. Like this is why Quick has $ everywhere, because this thing that I just explained for these server datas, which happen in a few places, you basically have to guard every single, because it's like a serialization boundary. It's where like you know that it's going to get hoisted, so any data like goes between client and server here needs to be able to be serialized across the network. And for that reason, when like using Quick, you have $ like this pretty much everywhere. So you have to be very aware of like, oh, this data like needs to be serializable, like because it's going to be shifted potentially, not necessarily, but it may get shipped across the boundary, between server and client. Because what I think is it's an interesting choice. It's the difference between Marco 6 and Quick. Is Marco's been trying to optimize those boundaries and reduce them small enough, but the challenge we've been having is like, how do you know what needs to be serialized? Because most things don't need to be serialized if you're smart about the reactive graph, but you still have to like there are things that need to be, and if you accidentally, like if you end up in a situation where that thing that needs to be serialized is not serializable, we can't really fail on you until runtime. And Quick went the opposite way. They're like, okay, structurally, all of these things could need to be serialized, so we're going to literally make it into the syntax that like to tell you that, so that there's no confusion. But I mean, this is where the trade-offs come in, because this is why like people are asking, well, how Solid and Quick can work together. Well, one of the challenges is if you are that strict on serialization rules, it gets a lot harder to do composition patterns like the way Solid does composition, like with memos, derived state and stuff, because suddenly like you have so many boundaries that you have to worry about it through that chain. And while it's solvable, to handle like say the pre-act case where you're like, okay, count +1, like right now in Quick, like if you put something directly in the template, they can actually, like a signal directly in the template, they can actually skip sending the template to the browser because they know it just has to update that one text node or whatever. But if you make it count +1, similar to Preact, it just de-optimizes, and now you have to a whole VDOM re-render. And you can work on making computeds and things that wrap that, but like essentially putting it in user space is like giving a user quite a loaded gun when you have this level of granularity that have to worry about serialization. So like those are two very different extreme approaches to handling resumability with automated boundaries. And so like, yeah, that's where, I'm kind of going like, are there other options where you can, maybe be more explicit, but make the boundaries larger? So yeah, it's an interesting one. There's still limits here of what you can do, and I think resumability with Quick is super compelling. Having a function for this looks like. Yeah. What you're saying is, like, don't do this. Just, like, always wrap it with the server function. Like, that was something we were doing here. Like, so you create resource, and then you're like, oh, server function this one. It makes it explicit. The thing is, this whole mechanism is compiled. It has to be, because it has to be code split. So, like, you're already there. Like, your options are like making named exports, but then you can't be dynamic about it. You kind of get in the remix area. Doing compilation like this. That's about it, actually, I think. Like, get server-side props is another example of like the named exports. You need something that you can hook into to be able to split it. It's all compiler tricks, because you're writing isomorphic code that you don't want in both places. So, I mean, you're kind of stuck there. Wouldn't call it stuck necessarily. It's just, yeah. Yeah, sorry, this is both about the lazy loading bit. Yeah, and I'm like, I thought so, which is why I was kind of addressing it, because like, I'm maybe I'll be proven wrong one day, but like the lazy loading part is like by far the least interesting thing to me. I could really care less. Like, it's almost a detriment from my perspective, because I start looking at solutions and go, if it didn't have that lazy loading, what else could I do? Like, I feel like that's going to ultimately be where like the philosophical split is between us, because I will die on the hill of composition, and I suspect Quick will die on the hill of this lazy loading. Yeah, I mean, this might be the best way to get both, right? Because by using solid, you lose some of the granularity of Quick's lazy loading, but you get our composition, right? That was my hope of this integration happening. I was hoping that I'd learn more about optimization in terms of like resumability by seeing how this works, and like see how we can wake up solid components and stuff. If we get like really smart with the reactivity. And then I was hoping on the other side that I'd convince Quick that composition is more important than anything else that they're doing. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I mean, the thing that often gets kind of called out on the Quick demos examples is like, let's see if I can find it. Not the showcase. Is it? Oh, it's examples. I want to find the. They have this really cool thing that they. I probably need a specific URL. They have like literally like something that's like called like. It's not examples. It's like it's not tutorial. It's like literally like the demo showcase or something, like the talk showcase, and they show it every single time they give a talk, and it has this like. I'm not going to reverse engineer and find it right now. Like there's this clock example that's always there, but they have this thing where they visualize the way that Quick is different than different hydrations, and it's like a big table, and you can like click on parts of it, and yeah, it's not here. I would love to talk about on that at some point, probably. Well, the thing is, like, okay, if you have really complicated dashboards or things where pieces tie together, I think in theory you can interact with parts of it with Quick, only get some of the stuff in ways that you can't do in any other framework. Like, there's no way to possibly, like pull out just that JavaScript you need for that piece. Like you're within a single conceptual section of the page, and you're like, oh, I only need this JavaScript written down. And maybe this thing is huge. It's like megabytes of JavaScript. It's like super table. It's like AG grid, like just, I don't know, like, and then you're like, oh, I only need the JavaScript for this part. And like, you could do this kind of thing. But like, again, when you look at that Excalidraw example, that part of the graph, when you're sitting there and you're like, how often when you're in something like e-commerce, even in social media, where it's just like, the main focus parts and the stuff that comes later. Like, don't get me wrong, we can make the code splitting there and the hydration timing and all that stuff easier to do, But I just have to ask, what's the difference between going, okay, this section's below the fold, we'll astro it, versus like slicing everything up? I mean, that's the question we have to ask, because over in Figma land might be a huge difference. Almost the whole rest of the scale, I'm not sure it even matters. So this is my opinion. I do not know this, but this is why, I pushed stuff in a certain direction. And the thing is, don't undercount Quick. Every time I've had like hey, what about this? They bounce back and done it. Like, when I was like, oh, Quick isn't really partial, and they're like, oh, let's, they worked on it, and they got partial, and they got proper partial data serialization. That wasn't something they had originally. They weren't skipping data serialization for stuff that they could properly skip. I've been bugging them since the beginning of time that fine-grained reactivity was important, because it helps them ship less templates, and they've started down that path too. So like, they definitely are on it, and they understand the problem space. So I wouldn't count them out on any of this. I'm just pointing out that like, this particular aspect is just not very interesting to me. Yeah. I don't. Someone's mentioning. Where was it? The showcase. I think the showcase is actually apps that people have made using Quick, which is a great idea. So people can like kind of just see what the websites look on quick. I think this is a great idea because it really shows cases off like, hey, I made a real site and I got these real performance benefits, you know. But yeah, it's not the example I'm looking for, unfortunately. Sorry, I'm responding to this. All right. Yeah, nice and short, 3.5 hours. So, yeah, I don't know. I think we are actually done for real this time. So I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. If you're in the States. And I'm gonna sign off. Have a great week. I won't be streaming this Friday, but Friday the December 2nd I should be back to my more regular schedule. All right. See y'all.